This was my Volkswagen Fox, a typical slow commuter car with only 54 horsepower. Now, I've been on a mission to make the performance version of cars that never had one, like I did with my Honda Jazz Type R. So in this video, you'll see the whole transformation of the Fox. You'll see us do a 1.8 turbo GTI engine swap, and then we'll install thousands of pounds worth of performance upgrades to make the car drive like a true GTI. We'll also make the car look like a GTI 2 from the interior and the exterior, and this was all in the hopes of creating what I think a Fox GTI would have looked like from the factory if Volkswagen had ever made one. So I'm now going to take you back in time to August 2024 when we started the project on this car, and the first job on the list was to remove the engine. So the first step was to get the car up on the ramp, and the method that I decided to use to take the engine out of this car is the same method that I learned when doing the Honda Jazz project, and that is to remove the subframe first and then take the engine out through the bottom of the engine bay. So in order to do this method correctly, I firstly had to remove parts of the exhaust. There we go. Exhaust is off. Right, we are going to start the car now and see what it sounds like. I think it's a bit of a legal obligation, so 3, 2, 1. Oh my God, that sounds mean. So now the exhaust was off, we could move on to removing the subframe. It's like a...
That would do damage, bro.
Mate, it's actually not that heavy. So in order to remove the whole subframe, I also had to remove the front passenger wheel, which I hadn't done yet. And then once that was done, I could move on to disconnecting the lower ball joint. We are now at the point where we can remove the subframe. There are 2 bolts left holding it on, and once we undo them, the subframe should come down. Now, the normal procedure here is to have a gearbox stand underneath the subframe when you're undoing the last 2 bolts so it doesn't just fall because it's very heavy. We don't have a gearbox stand, so what we are doing is using these tyres, and we're going to lift the drop the subframe down onto these tyres, undo the last 2 bolts, which should allow the subframe to rest on these tyres when we lift the car back up. Mate, who needs a gearbox stand?
No one, bro. Let's go.
Told you it would work. So now that the subframe has been very elegantly removed, we need to take out the drive shafts. And to do so, there are some bolts that we need to undo. Now, I've already tested it out, and this big contraption with the big gun, it does work. They're very difficult to get to though, essentially. There are 6 M8 spline bolts I need to undo. Again, I don't know why Volkswagen insists on using splines and weird things you need weird tools for, basically. It's like they're trying to make their cars anti-work on them yourself. So after getting the drive shafts out of the way with some cable ties, we could then go about removing the coolant. Yeah, there we go. So after draining the coolant, the next job was to attack the engine bay from the top side, and I could start by removing the battery and then just disconnecting everything that connects the engine to the car. So that's the wiring loom, that's any vac lines, that's coolant lines, the gear selector cables and the clutch line. And then once absolutely everything in the engine bay was disconnected, we could then drop the engine. So we are now at the point where absolutely everything has been disconnected in the engine bay, and all we need to do is get this pallet, put it underneath the engine, lower the engine onto the pallet, disconnect the engine mounts, lift the car up over the engine, and then pull the pallet out from underneath. That's the plan. Let's give it a go. Yep, keep going. Nice, yep, that's all right. Yep, keep going. Right, stop. Right, send her up. So we are now at the point where the engine has been fully removed from the Fox, and we've also put the subframe and the wheels back on off camera so the car can roll. But we are now in a really good position to start the 1.8 BAM engine swap. But before we do any of that, the first job is to get this wiring loom out of the Fox because it needs a fair bit of modification to make it work with the GTI engine. So let's get it out. So the whole body loom needs to come out, and the first step of doing that is to remove the scuttle panel. Just needs a yank. Oh my God. It's like an ecosystem down there. The amount of organisms living in my Fox. Right, scuttle panel off. So now the scuttle panel is off, we can see that we need to unplug the indicators that are in the wings, and to do that we need to take off the wheel arch liners. So let's get the car on the ramp. There we go. Oh my God, look at the ecosystem in here. How many spiders do you reckon? I genuinely think there was a whole population of spiders. So now that the arch liner was out, I could access the indicator bulb and I could remove it from behind. I also had to take off the ABS sensor, which sits behind our brake disc. So as usual, the ABS was an absolute nightmare to remove, but it's now out and we can do the same on the other side. So the next step is to unplug everything in the engine bay, such as the headlights, the coolant reservoir, the brake fluid reservoir, and absolutely every electronic component in the engine bay. To get to some of the loom, which was a little bit inaccessible, I also had to remove the front bumper. There you go. Off. Faceless Jazz. Nope, that's not the Jazz, that's the Fox. This is what I couldn't get to earlier. They are very, very in there, but now the bumper's off, this should be a lot easier to remove. So now all of that has been undone, the next step is to remove this panel, which the scuttle panel kind of sits on. What else is holding this on? I'm struggling to think what's holding that on. It's got to be just like a sealant or something. Whilst I figure out what's holding that on, make sure to smash that subscribe button if you haven't already, and like the video if you enjoy this type of content, because we've got so much more coming in the future. Maybe if I have some Holy, I'll be able to get it off. All right, I think it'll come off now. If we just give it lots of wiggles. I'm an idiot. I'm so sorry. I'm a massive idiot. I'm a huge idiot. There's literally one bolt just sat there going, you forgot about me. Yeah, see, look what happens when you actually undo all the bolts. It actually, like, it comes out then. Great success. So now that metal panel was off, all I had left to do was to disconnect the remaining loom, which was essentially just a few clips, some plugs I still had to undo, and some bolts. And once all of that was done, the loom was then ready to come out. Oh, I think we've done it. That was the least elegant removal of a loom ever. But, ladies and gentlemen, that is the loom out. We can now send this off to Leeds, I think, to get this completely modified to work with our GTI engine. That's a job well done. So now that loom is out of the Fox, you can see the engine bay looks even more empty. And once that loom comes back from the person who's doing some modifications to it, we'll be ready to fit the engine. Now, you are probably wondering, where is the engine and have you bought one? Well, the answer is no. I've bought a car instead. Now, many of you are probably hoping that I'm not going to strip this perfectly good Polo GTI to pieces, but that is exactly what I'm going to do. I bought this car for £2,000, and using this car as a donor is the fastest and most cost-effective way to build the Fox GTI. And this is because the Polo is the same platform as the Fox, so we can use so much from this car, like the engine, the mounts, the drive shafts, the subframe, the hubs, the front brakes, the wiring loom, the wheels, the interior, and we can even do a rear brake disc conversion on the Fox, as currently it has drum brakes. A lot of you might be against it, but this is the best method to create a really unique build with this Fox and to fulfill my aspiration of absolutely smoking modern hot hatches in what most would consider a granny car. On top of all of that, this engine has been remapped to 217 brake horsepower. I've driven it, it's not slow. So before we take this car to pieces, let's quickly see what it does a 0 to 60 in. So we are now on a nice straight road to do a 0 to 60. My friend is sat in the back seat and he's going to be timing it with the phone. Count me in, Jav.
Ready, set, go.
How was that?
6.56.
6.56. Okay, that is decent. I'm happy with that. This car does feel a bit faster, but we now have something to shoot for when we get this engine in the Fox. We are going to be doing a hybrid turbo to the Fox as well, so we're going to be shooting for 300 horsepower and a 0 to 60. That is a lot faster than 6.56. So now the Polo's on the ramp, we can begin with getting out the engine. A good thing about doing this is that it is exactly the same as the Fox, meaning I will be able to smash through this because I know what I'm doing, I've done it before. So yeah, we're gonna start with getting off this subframe. So removing this is fairly simple. There's just a few bolts that connect the steering rack to the subframe that you've got to undo first, and then a few more on the ball joints on either side. And once all of those have been undone, there are 4 main bolts mounting the subframe to the chassis of the car, and once those have been undone, it can then be lowered down. So now the subframe is off, we can get on with removing the front section of the exhaust. Oh, yes! Mate, look at that tool. That's 2 extensions, a wiggly thing. Yes! Whew. There we go. One exhaust. The next things to remove were the drive shafts. Almost a good catch. There you are. Nice. Now the next thing I wanted to do was to remove the front bumper so I could have better access to the AC condenser, the radiator and the intercooler. So now the bumper is off, we can see the intercooler, the AC condenser, and the radiator. This definitely has an aftermarket intercooler. As you can see, it is very thick, and there is a faint bit of writing saying AirTech, meaning the previous owner did spend a bit of money on this. Now, you can see if you follow it down, all of these boost pipes, essentially the turbo is up there, all of the pressured air comes through here, whoosh, and then into the bottom of the intercooler where it comes round, it gets cooled down by the oncoming air, and then it comes down around here into our intake manifold. So that's basically how it works. We now need to get off this intercooler, all of the boost piping, and then I think we can take off the battery. So as for removing this intercooler, it couldn't be more simple. The only things you have to do is to make sure all of the boost pipes are disconnected, which involves undoing all of the Jubilee clips, and then there are just 4 bolts mounting the intercooler into place. And once it was off, I could then remove the crash bar, the headlights, and the battery.
Oh my God, I can't believe you caught me on the phone with him.
And once that was all off, it was then time to remove the rad pack.
Spread like it was running thick in here for me.
Oh my God, that took ages.
I must admit there was something
So we are really nearly there with getting this engine out. The last little bit is the very fiddly, annoying bit which I absolutely hate, and that is disconnecting the whole wiring loom and breaking a load of the clips whilst I'm at it. And aside from that, we had to remove the heater matrix pipes, the gear selector cables, the clutch line, and a few other minor bits connecting the engine to the car. And once all of that was done, the engine was ready to come out. So everything in the engine bay has now been disconnected, and we're going to use the same technique we used in the previous video on the Fox, where we put a pallet underneath the engine, disconnect the engine, let it rest on the pallet, and then lift the car up over the engine, which will then be on the pallet, if that makes sense. So let's give it a go. So yeah, down she comes. Keep going all the way. Oh, is this pallet gonna be strong enough? Cool, all right, that'll do. It's out, and before you even go up, I should be able to just pull it forward because there's nothing stopping it from coming forward, so. Apart from the fact that it's really heavy. Right, I think it's ready to go up. Yeah, go, send it. So that is one GTI engine removed from the Polo. Now we still have stuff to remove from this car, like this whole body loom, and we still have to get the engine in that car. But before we do any of that, we need to try and move this thing. Jesus. Hello, Alpa.
How may I help?
Please, may I borrow a pump truck? I've got a very heavy engine which I need to move. Oh my gosh. That is what I need. Beautiful. Oh, that makes this so much easier. So the engine is out of the way, and I can start with removing the body loom from the Polo, the exact same as I did on the Fox, but this time I'm not gonna show you, I'm just gonna do it. 3, 2, 1. One Polo loom. Time for the world's first downgrade engine swap. We're putting the 1.4 in the Polo just because it gets it out of the way, but I thought I'd film it because it is quite funny, so let's get it in. So essentially, the reasoning behind putting the Fox's 1.4 into the Polo is because when I come to scrap the Polo eventually, I can also do it with this engine all at the same time and get it all out of the way at the same time. But whilst I'm at it, I am also probably making the world's first Polo GTI with a 1.4 litre engine. Ladies and gentlemen, I introduce to you the world's first 1.4 engine swap Polo GTI. The most pointless downgrade of an engine swap ever. But now it is time for the big one. We need to do this exact same process, but with the Fox and the 1.8T. However, before we could get the engine into the Fox, we firstly had to do a few things. We had to take the Fox's subframe off and swap it with the Polo's subframe because the Fox's subframe wouldn't work with the 1.8T engine. We also had to put the Fox's drive shafts and its subframe onto the Polo so that we could then get the car rolling.
I've been working 9 to 5 while you stay home in bed. You said you would get a job so you can pay the rent.
Once all of that had been fitted to the Polo, we could then roll it off the ramp, and once the Polo was out of the way, we could then roll the Fox onto the ramp and get it up in the air. And then we had to take the Fox's subframe, which was the old Polo subframe, off one last time so that we could get the engine fitted.
On my side, boy, tell me where were you tonight?
We are so good today. Oh my god. Okay, oh, Jesus. Hang on. I tell you what. Right, ready? Bro, you do it, you row it. So after getting the new GTI engine roughly in the right place to fit in the Fox, all we had to do was make small little adjustments to line up the engine mounts, and then we could get the engine bolted in.
The storm that you brew, baby, you know what I'm saying is true. Man will remember that boy is a fool. The things that you said, tell me the thing was what you.
And ladies and gentlemen, after getting the engine mount bolts done up, the 1.8 turbo GTI engine was in the Fox.
Crazy times, can't you feel it? Is there a reason for it all? Maybe take a ride on this pipe train.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I introduce to you the Fox GTI. The 1.8 turbo GTI engine is in. As you can see, it is very much in the engine bay and it is looking amazing. I cannot wait to get this started and driving. But before we focus on getting this car running, the first thing we've got to do is a little bit of engine maintenance. A lot of you guys pointed out in the comment section of the previous video on the Fox that I just whacked this engine in without cleaning anything or doing any maintenance. So let's get those jobs done first and then get the engine back in and focus on getting it running. Now the first port of call to do all of the maintenance jobs I want to do is to get the engine out of the Fox, which is relatively simple. I just waxed off the wheels and then undid the engine mounts. So the first bit of maintenance I wanted to do was to replace the clutch with a new one, so I had to remove the gearbox. That's one gearbox. I could then get the engine on the crane and remove the old clutch. There is material on that, so it did have a little bit of life left. New pressure plate, old pressure plate. You can see sort of the difference. That's what I mean, like the new clutches have lots of like thick material on them, don't they?
Yeah.
Now to get the new clutch fitted, I've got to use something called a clutch alignment tool, which, as you might guess, makes sure the clutch is aligned when you fit it. And once lifting up the whole clutch assembly to the flywheel, I can then bolt it down using a cross pattern just to make sure that everything stays as flat as possible. And once the clutch was installed, I could then move on to fitting a new set of spark plugs. After taking out the old ones, I could put in the new NGK spark plugs. And I also wanted to do a quick oil change. If you spill oil on the floor and you've got a cat at home, use some cat litter, chuck it on the oil, it like sucks it all up. Right, let's give that a go. There we go.
There we go.
So we have done the oil, the spark plugs, the clutch. The last thing I want to replace is the auxiliary belt. We need to loosen off the belt and then also take off the AC condenser because we are not running AC in the Fox because it doesn't have any AC ports. So to remove the auxiliary belt, I had to grab a 15mm spanner and pull the tab to loosen off the tensioner, and then I can just pull the auxiliary belt straight off. And once that was done, I could then remove the AC condenser, which was just being held on by 3 bolts. And then it was on with the new auxiliary belt. Right, so all of the maintenance on the 1.8T GTI engine has been done. A lot of you might have noticed we didn't do the timing belt or the water pump, and that is because both of those two things have been done relatively recently. If you look in the service booklet, you can see it was like 10,000 miles ago, so it's not really necessary that we need to do that on this engine. Now, we can move on to, if you follow me around, the looms that I showed you at the beginning of this video. We've got the body loom and the engine loom. Obviously, the engine loom is just gonna go on the engine, and then the body loom needs to go into the engine bay of the Fox. Now, there are 2 main jobs that we need to do before we can get the engine in and connect it up to those looms. And those 2 jobs are Firstly, the gear selectors. These are the standard Fox gear selectors and they won't work with the 1.8T, so we need to take those out and replace those with the gear selectors that are in the Polo currently. And we also need to do a bit of fiddling around with the fuel system. To cut a long story short, the Fox's standard engine and the engine bay only has one fuel line. It is what we call a returnless system, so it only has one fuel line going into the engine. Whereas the 1.8T, as you can see here, has two sort of ports for fuel lines, a feed and a return. So basically, we need to make the Fox's engine bay have two fuel lines in it when it only has one at the minute. So the solution is the Polo again. These are our two fuel lines right here, the return and the feed. We need to basically take the whole fuel system out of the Polo and put it in the Fox. You can sort of start to see now why I really wanted this Polo, because it sort of fixes absolutely every problem we're coming across with this engine swap. So yeah, if you're on board, we've got to do those two jobs. But firstly, let's do the looms.
You know that I won't lie.
So Jav and I started by connecting up the engine loom to the engine.
Everything like, say the way just
Now, this is a really simple process. You literally just have to plug in all of the plugs into the correct places. So it's stuff like the injectors, the coil packs, numerous different sensors. All of these different parts of the engine need to be plugged in. So after getting the engine loom completely fitted and everything plugged in, I could then move on to the body loom.
I'll give it one shot, make it hard.
Again, similarly to the engine loom, all you have to do with the body loom is plug all of the plugs into the correct places, but it is a little bit more tricky because you have to think about the routing of the wires and also just keeping the engine bay neat and tidy.
I'm thinking it's for life with you.
Whilst getting the body loom fitted, I also made sure to get the scuttle panel and the ECU mounted up as well. Just a quick reminder, if you haven't yet subscribed, make sure you do so because it massively supports the channel and it allows me to keep making you content just like this. So we are making some good progress. The engine loom is on the engine and everything is connected up, and the body loom is now fitted. This was a bit of a task, but because the loom was sort of labeled, I could figure out where most of the stuff went. We started to get the scuttle panel fitted back in, and also the windscreen wiper motors have been fitted as well. And yeah, there is not much left to do with the body loom. Obviously, there is gonna still be a lot of stuff to connect up when the engine goes in, but for now, we can move on to the next two jobs, which, as I said earlier, is the gear selectors and the fuel system. So I firstly decided to tackle swapping over the gear selectors. Now, the first job when doing this was to unbolt the Polo's selector from inside the car. Once all the nuts were undone and it was loose, I could then get the car up on some axle stands and remove it from underneath. But to do so, I had to take off some under trays and also the exhaust heat shield. Yay! That is a great success. One gear selector out of a Polo. Now I need to get the gear selector out of the Fox and change them over. So as for removing the Fox's gear selector, it is the exact same process. Unbolt it from the inside and then take it out from underneath. So after removing the Fox's gear selector and heat shield in one go, I could quickly get out the angle grinder to remove the old rear section of the Fox's exhaust, because as I'm sure a lot of you might have guessed, I'm not going to be running a standard Fox exhaust on this GTI engine setup, so that had to go. And once that was done, I could then fit up the Polo GTI's gear selector to the Fox, and yes, ladies and gentlemen, it is a straight fit. And that is because, as you can see, the studs are in exactly the same position on each gear selector, making this a lot easier. So once the GTI gear selector was in place, I could then get the car back down, get inside, and bolt it up. So that is the gear selector from the Polo fitted into the Fox. It is underneath this heat shield now. You can't see it, but I have since put on the brace and the under tray on the left side, but the right-hand side under tray I have not put on because we are now going to do the fuel system swap over from the Polo to the Fox, and it's all of sort of this stuff here, so the under tray needs to stay off. But let's give it a go. So the first thing to do is to disconnect and remove the fuel system from the Polo, because that is what we'll be swapping into the Fox. Now, we have got the Polo fuel system out of the Polo, and you can see the blue line there is the return. The clear one, I think, is a breather, although I'm not sure, and the black one is the feed. So that gives us the fuel system we need to run the 1.8T. So before fitting the Polo's fuel system into the Fox, I firstly had to remove the Fox's standard fuel feed line. After the standard feed line was out, I could then get the Polo's fuel system and feed it all the way through this little section in the engine bay, which is a lot easier said than done. And once feeding through the lines most of the way, I could get underneath the car and pull the lines through. So now that both the fuel feed and the return lines have been threaded through to the back, I can get them connected up. The fuel filter connects with our new fuel feed line, and the Fox's standard return line, which used to be connected to the fuel filter using this T-piece, can now connect to our new return line from the engine bay. And after finishing it up, this is what it looked like. So the fuel system in the Fox is now completely connected up. We have our return line there, and I'm going to leave it up there, and the feed now coming straight from the fuel filter all the way around. And yeah, these lines are now looking great. I need to put the under tray back on, but other than that, we are now ready to get this engine fitted into this car for the final time. So before getting the engine fitted, we firstly had to quickly whip off the subframe, because as I'm sure you all know by now, we can't fit this engine in with the subframe on. So once the subframe was off, we could then begin fitting the GTI engine into the Fox, using a technique I have recently become very familiar with, and that is of course lowering the car with the ramp over the engine and then bolting up the engine mounts once everything has been lined up. Once the engine was mounted in the engine bay, I could then get the car up on the ramp and start fitting the drive shafts. Now, these drive shafts aren't the standard Fox ones, and again, like a load of other parts of this build, they are from the Polo. It just goes to show how important having that donor car really is. So it was a little bit more of a fiddly job than I expected, but the drive shafts are now in. We can now move on to fitting the exhaust, which is going to come out from the turbo just here over the steering rack, and we're going to put that on first before we do the subframe, because I think it'll be a bit easier now the subframe is off. So exhaust, then subframe, then we can sort out connecting stuff up in the engine bay. Right, guys, I have just had a little thought. Why not try and fit the Miltech exhaust from the Polo onto the Fox? It would save us a lot of money trying to get an exhaust sorted for this. We may as well try it. Now, to be honest, I had no idea whether this exhaust was actually going to fit onto the Fox. The exhausts on the two cars look nearly identical. However, there was a lot of information online saying you can't actually swap them over. But to be honest, I just wanted to give it a go because these Miltech exhaust systems are really expensive, and being able to fit this system onto the Fox would save me a load of money, so I thought it was worth a shot. But just as I was trying to remove the exhaust from the Polo, someone turned up to give me a hand. A man has arrived. Hello mate, you right?
Came to swap for your Fox, if that's possible.
Oh, what, this?
Yeah. Oh, sorry for that.
It does look newer, to be fair.
Mate, this thing pulls like a train, I swear.
Is it a 2 litre diesel?
I've got no clue. It's a rental.
Is it a rental? The fastest car in the world?
Hey, you got to move some engines around? Don't use your car. Use a rental.
It's only gone and snapped the bowl.
Oh. If you got an angle grinder here, I'll happily, if it's cutting, I'll happily do it.
Do you want to do some cutting?
Absolutely.
Okay, go on, I'll let you do some cutting.
Put me in, coach.
Right, we've subbed in Edwin to try and get this exhaust off.
I reckon I can get the whole V-band.
Oh, he's so good. That is so unbelievably on there. The exhaust definitely was unbelievably on there. Essentially what happened was the rear section and the mid section had seized together and we were trying to loosen it off with the hammer, but it just wasn't working. Edwin came up with the idea to lower the rear beam so that we could maybe pull the whole exhaust out from the back, but that didn't work. So we just had to keep hammering.
Yeah!
Oh my God.
Good stuff, man.
That took way too long.
A win is a win.
A win is a win. Do you know what? Do you know what would be even funnier though? If we did all of that and it doesn't fit.
It doesn't fit. Should we do a test fit?
Let's do a test fit. Right. So the reason why I did this was because it looked like it would fit. So if you go like that,
that's looking good.
it looks like it might work. You know. Yeah. Let's give the rear section a test.
Ooh. A Volkswagen Fox doesn't have any right to have that, but that's pretty cool.
Look at it. Oh mate, this genuinely I think it will fit.
I think that's gonna go.
So unfortunately Edwin had to leave at this point, but I could still get the exhaust fitted to check that it would actually fit onto the Fox. So I've got some good news and I've got some bad news. The good news is that I think we'll be able to use this. The bad news is that it's going to need some modification because it doesn't just fit straight up. As you can see, this is it fitted and it is just way too long. None of the hangers line up. So there's the hanger up here, which doesn't really line up. Basically, it needs some modification, but we're still going to get the car running and driving. We just won't have an exhaust for the first drive, so that'll be quite fun. So let's take this off and then move on to the next job, which is the subframe. So after removing the rear section and the mid section of the Milltech exhaust, I could then temporarily cable tie up the downpipe and move on to the subframe. Now at this point, I feel like I have done this job more than a Volkswagen technician, but either way, we could get the subframe lifted up and bolted onto the chassis. So now the subframe was fitted, I could then get the final engine mount installed as well. And this basically just stops the engine from swaying back and forth. So everything underneath the car has now been done. Now we need to move on to everything in the engine bay. And the first thing I want to point out is these fuel lines. They fit on there so perfectly. It's like, obviously, this is the same platform, so it makes sense. We've got the engine from the Polo and the fuel lines from the Polo, so it obviously works, but it is just really satisfying to know that we can do this engine swap so easily. That on the Jazz was so much more work, so it's just very nice. We have obviously a few things to do here. Gear selectors need connecting up. We've got a load of like plugs that need connecting up. We're going to have to sort through all of this, but once that's done, we can then move on to the radiator, the intercooler, bumper on, start it up, drive off. Sick sleeper. So I started off all of the jobs I needed to do in the engine bay by connecting up those fuel lines. And then I could fit the clutch slave cylinder, which for those of you who don't know is basically a hydraulic piston which is responsible for engaging and disengaging your clutch. It's basically what your left foot is controlling when you're pressing down and lifting up the clutch pedal. And fitting the slave cylinder then allowed me to bolt down and connect up the gear selector cables as well. And these cables connect to the GTI shifter which we installed earlier, and these of course allow you to select the gears. So once I had finished up with the gear selectors, I could then move on to plugging in the rest of the Loom.
What you think? One shot to a lifetime. Give you my all, yeah. One shot, make it hot. One shot. I'm thinking it's for life with you.
The last thing to do to get the Loom fully connected up was to fit the battery. Right, so everything has been connected up to the engine now, apart from 3 things. We haven't put on the air filter, we haven't put on the intercooler or the boost piping, and we haven't put on the radiator or fitted any of the coolant system. However, that shouldn't matter with getting this engine started. We're going to run it naturally aspirated for the first start, just to see if everything works. Now, we know that the engine runs because obviously we had it in the Polo, and in the previous video, we took the Polo for a 0 to 60 run and the engine was great. However, the big question mark with this is whether the Loom works. I've heard a lot of stories from friends of mine who have had Volkswagen Looms made, and they seem to go wrong a lot with a custom wiring loom. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed that this wiring loom works and the engine starts. So let's give it a go. 3, 2. What? That was the strangest first start I have ever experienced. What was it doing? Right, so we have found out what the problem is. Basically, I forgot to fit this sort of consortment of breather pipes, and essentially this will all connect up and stop our 180 from having loads of vac leaks and revving all over the place. So let's get this on and then give it another start. So after getting those breather pipes fitted, I could then try to start the car again. Right, take 2. She's min. That has fixed it. Okay, I am an idiot for forgetting that.
I'm stuck in space, got a daydream running through my brain every day.
Okay, so now we know the engine starts and runs fine, we can move on to fitting these remaining pieces of the puzzle. We have the boost piping and the air filter, the front bumper, the crash bar, the front panel, the radiator, and the intercooler. Now, the Polo's front panel is very different to the Fox's front panel. The Polo's one won't fit on the Fox, so in order to fit the Polo's radiator, which we need because it's a lot bigger than the Fox's radiator, we need to make the hole in the Fox's front panel bigger. So to do this, I firstly measure out how wide the Polo's radiator is, and I can then get out the angle grinder and make the hole in the Fox's front panel big enough to fit this radiator. And then I can drill some holes to help mount this radiator up. After that, I can then install the mounting brackets for the intercooler and get that mounted up as well. And once all of that is done, I can then get this new front panel fitted. So then the next job was to install and connect up all of the boost piping. And another thing we had to do here was bolt up the crash bar, which was sort of difficult because we had to remove some of the boost pipes and move the intercooler a little bit. So we really are getting close now. The final things I had to do was fit the scuttle panel, the windscreen wipers, the air filter, the front bumper, and then I could finally bleed the cooling system. Ladies and gentlemen, we are now very, very close to being able to take this car out for a drive. There is one last thing I want to do, and that is to do with the exhaust. We have this sort of cable-tied mess, which I showed you earlier on in the video, and I've shown this to a few of my friends who know about exhaust, and they have told me that those plastic cable ties will last all of about 5 minutes when I take this car out for a drive, because this gets very hot indeed. So I have come up with a little bit of a plan. We have the Miltech exhaust on the floor here, which, as we discovered earlier, doesn't fit the Fox, but actually some of it does. The rear section is too long and doesn't fit, but the midsection actually does fit. So if I can fit the midsection and cut this little bit off the rear section and fit that, it will sort of end as sort of like a downturned exhaust up here, and it will be away from the fuel tank and away from any brake lines. So that is the plan. Let's give it a try. So I could get the angle grinder out again to get this exhaust sorted. All I had to do was chop off that little part of the rear section, and once that was done, I could get the midsection fitted onto the car. and then I could fit on our little addition from the rear section to help it clear the rear beam. And after finishing this up, I think it looks much better, and it is definitely a better solution. Right, it is the big moment. I am itching with excitement to see if this thing moves. I'm going to get in it, start it, see if it rolls. If it does, that is a win. And then if it does do that, we'll be able to take it on a drive. So, right, handbrake off. First gear, works. Oh my God, this thing wants to go. Reverse. We're working. It moves. Forward again. Oh, yes! Oh, listen to the turbo. I cannot stop myself from just laughing at this car. It is so ridiculous, but at the same time, I am so proud of myself. This is the first time I've really ever done an engine swap completely by myself without much help, to be honest. So I'm very proud of myself, and the car moves. It is gonna be, well, a very interesting drive, as you'll see in a second. But what I just love is how this engine bay is the only thing giving away this car. If I put that bonnet down, absolutely nothing on this car makes it look like it is fast whatsoever. It has standard everything on it, so it is a proper sleeper. But with all of that said, let's go and take this car out for our first drive. Right, so for this first drive, we've got Jav in the passenger seat. This is going to be pretty sketchy because obviously it has the Polo's power, but it's got like wobbly suspension.
None of the Polo's extra bits.
Yeah, it's made for going 60 miles an hour and nothing more. So starts literally on the button. Are you feeling confident?
Yeah, definitely not nervous.
The only other annoying thing, again, it's similar to the Jazz. This car has no temperature gauge, so I have no idea how hot it is. If it does overheat, there'll just be one red light that goes, I'm really hot.
I'm really hot.
Oh my God. Doesn't it feel so weird with that suspension?
Yeah.
Did you hear that pop?
Yeah. Oh,
this is mental.
The car moves, that's the main thing.
Yeah, it moves, but do you know what is weird? Like every time you change gear, like the car, like, do you feel it?
A little bunny hop.
It like... It's rubbish.
Jesus Christ.
This is definitely quicker than the Jazz, isn't it?
Oh yeah.
The Jazz is really fun because you've got like 8,500 RPM, but this is just like, you get the boost, you get the torque, it like properly puts you back in your seat.
Yeah.
I don't know what that noise is.
We're hearing noises. Blah, blah, blah.
I can't express how unsafe it feels with these tyres, with this floaty suspension, with these brakes. It does not feel...
You are literally gripping the steering wheel so tight.
Yeah. Honestly, it's like, it's getting my adrenaline going a little bit.
Oh my God, it is not slow.
It's not slow at all.
Not slow at all.
Well, we've got this van behind us who probably thinks, oh yeah,
Oh,
what is that Volkswagen Fox doing? This thing is rapid!
Oh my God.
Oh my God, it's absolutely rapid turn. Oh, the suspension! Mate, this is scary. Damn.
It is rapid.
This thing is so quick. Well, I have to say, I am over the moon with the Fox GTI. This is probably the fastest car I've built on my channel. It's definitely faster than Boris. It's definitely faster than the Jazz, and it feels completely stupid to drive. It does make you very fearful for your life as well, which is quite fun. The suspension, the brakes, the tires, everything will need upgrading for me to actually be able to enjoy driving this car without being scared. So the first place I'm going to start is with the wheels and the brakes on the Polo. These GTI wheels are really cool and I want to fit them on the Fox. Same goes with the brakes. They're bigger and better performing, so let's take them off. Now, both the wheels and the brakes on the Polo aren't in very good condition. The wheels have got curb marks all over them and the brakes definitely need repainting. So before we fit these to the Fox, they're gonna need to be refurbished. So once the wheels and the brakes had been taken off the Polo, I could get them packed into the back of the Jazz and take them to the refurbishment shop. So I bought the wheels and brakes to 360 Alloys and Bodyshop. These guys are absolute wizards and they are the ones who managed to perfectly colour match the wheels on my Honda Jazz. So we will leave these guys to work their magic and come back later to see the result. Now, the next job I want to tackle is the handling. This car drives atrociously. As we discovered in the previous video, it is very scary. And that is because the suspension is so wobbly and floaty and the wheel arch gap is like this big. So we have got two major modifications to transform the way this car drives. First things first, coilovers. These are BC Racing's V1 series coilovers, and not only do they look absolutely beautiful, but they are going to make the Fox handle like it's on rails. And not to mention, get rid of this horrible wheel arch gap. Just take a look at how beautiful these coilovers are. BC have a habit of just making the most beautiful coilovers ever made, but these are going to completely transform the handling of the Fox. It's going to turn it from a floaty boat to a enhanced track vehicle. It's gonna be sick. Let's get them on. There you are. So after removing the first bolt to take out the shock, I have just realized something. We have currently got the Fox brake and hub assembly sort of combination on here. And obviously, as we saw earlier, we want to fit the Polo GTI brakes. And those GTI brakes only work with the Polo hub assembly. So before we fit the coilovers, we need to fit the Polo hub assembly onto here. So let's do that, and then we can fit the coilovers. So in order to remove basically everything in the wheel well, including the standard shock and the hub assembly all together, the first thing to do is to disconnect it all from the subframe. And there's just 3 13mm bolts to undo. I also had to disconnect the brake lines and drain the fluid. And once that's done, I can undo the hub nut and pull the drive shaft out from the back of the hub. Now I also need to quickly disconnect the tie rod from the steering knuckle, and then I can unplug the ABS sensor and move on to the final job, which is undoing the 3 top mount bolts holding in the shock. Now unfortunately, undoing the final bolt wasn't very straightforward. I ended up having to drill it out. There we go. And once I had done so, everything in the wheel well could be removed. Jobs are good. This was the problem. That nut in there, see how this is like teared there? This nut was spinning in there, which meant that every time we were spinning this, that nut was spinning, which wasn't undoing the bolt. So we had to drill the bolt out.
I've always dirtied everything that I've found.
Now we have taken this off the Fox, we can move on to fitting the Polo hub assembly and just take a look at the new bearings and the new hub assembly which I've bought. We could have got the hub assembly and the bearings off the donor Polo, but I wanted to get some nice fresh new ones, and these are going to look so good with the coilovers. I mean, that is going to look insane when that's fitted. So to get this all installed, I started off by lifting the coilover into the wheel well and then doing up the top mount nuts finger tight. Now, before fitting the hub assembly, I firstly put a little bit of copper grease just on the outside of the coilover and the inside of the hub sort of sleeve, and this is going to allow it to be much easier to install. So as for getting it installed, I could position it just under the coilover and then give it a little tippy tap with a hammer, and that's going to allow that hub sleeve to slide over the bottom of the coilover. I could then get the drive shaft refitted and get the subframe reconnected to the lower ball joint. And then after getting the tie rod reinstalled, the last thing to do was to tighten up the 3 top mount nuts.
That is seriously on there. Yeah, I've got a bit of a CV boot leak there. There we go.
So it seems to be a little bit of 2 steps forward, 1 step back with this. We've ran into a couple of problems, which I'm going to show you now. So firstly, we have the drive shaft. If you look in the CV boot, there is a little nick, which is letting all of the grease out. And I've just had to clean it all up. And that basically means we need a new CV boot. And I need to do that before the drive shaft goes in the hub. Also, the tie rod end has got a big rip in it. That is an MOT failure. And on top of that, the nut seized on, so I had to cut it off. So that needs replacing as well, new tie rod end. So basically, we've got a few jobs that we need to get on with before we can fit the new hub and the new coilover. So I'm gonna come back to this later, but for now, let's do the rears.
This is gonna need a whack. That went smoother than I thought it would. Really?
So luckily for me, doing the rears is a lot easier than doing the fronts. The main thing to do is to undo the 2 bolts at the bottom of each of the rear shocks, and that's going to allow the rear beam to fully come down, which will then in turn allow us to remove the springs. And then taking out the shocks themselves is nice and easy. There's just 2 top mount bolts to undo, and then it can be taken out. Now, something I really like about these Volkswagens is this rear beam design. Those 2 bottom shock bolts we undid earlier are responsible for holding up this whole rear beam, and it makes it really easy to install new suspension together as long as you have a gearbox jack. So once I'd got those new springs in, I could then swap over the top mount from the old shock to our new BC shock and then get those fitted. So the BCs on the rear have now been fitted and they're looking great. We have just had some new parts arrive. We've got our CV boot kit and our tie rod end, so we can now fix our faulty boot and our faulty tie rod end. Let's get these on. Now, replacing an old CV boot is quite possibly my least favourite job to do on a car because it is just so messy. But either way, the first thing to do is to peel back the old boot, give everything a bit of a clean with some brake cleaner, and then I can get out the old trusty angle grinder and chop off the old boot. Once that's done, I can then use a hammer and a microfiber to gently tap off the old CV joint. I can then get the new CV boot and get that fitted over the drive shaft. And before getting it all fitted back together, I need to use the grease that's supplied with the kit and smear it all inside the CV boot and the joint.
Just to make sure that's all in.
And now comes the job of hitting on the CV joint with the hammer. This is a job which I am notoriously bad at. When building the Honda Jazz, this was probably the only thing I just simply couldn't do.
This is not my forte, I'll be first to admit.
I can tell.
So I was really hoping I could get it this time.
Doing this job is my arch nemesis, I'm pretty sure.
It's on.
Oh my god, Jav, we did it.
That took no time at all.
That literally took us 5 minutes.
Literally.
That didn't take us 2 hours.
Not at all.
On the video, you can see that was like cut, straight on.
So that is one CV boot replaced. Now we can get on with fitting the coilovers and the new hub assembly.
There we go. Mate, look at that.
I think it's broken.
I think it's broken.
So after finishing up the tie rod on the passenger side, I went over to go and have a look at the driver's side one, and it had the exact same fault with the rubber that I hadn't noticed before, so I went ahead and changed this one as well.
There we go. Damn it.
So these are the old tie rods, and as you can see, they have got big rips in the rubber, and that's the reason why we needed to replace them. Now, because this rubber is perished, I thought it'd be worth a look at the lower ball joint, which also has a similar sort of rubber. And what do you know? The lower ball joint is really perished, even worse than the tie rod ends were. And because this lower ball joint for that side was perished, I thought, let's check the other lower ball joint. And if you have a look in here, I didn't notice it when fitting this initially, but you can see that rubber is completely perished in there as well. So that is not ideal. These also need replacing. So what started as simply fitting a new set of coilovers has turned into replacing practically every single handling component on this Fox, which is not what I had planned, but this car really needed it. I love it how this has gone from fitting a set of coilovers to now fixing whole car. And as for replacing this lower ball joint, there's just those 3 13mm bolts connecting it to the subframe that I need to undo, and then that big nut on the top. There we go. As you can see, this one is also ruined. So we've got some new ones now. New one.
Life is for life with you. My God is telling me don't go. So won't you stay a while? Who knew that we could end up super close?
So after getting the driver's side one sorted, I could move on to the passenger side.
But oh no, that's not how I think. My mind.
And now that I'd got this side installed, I was finally finished. So now those coilovers are fitted, we can move on to installing the second big mod to help the handling on the Fox, and that is these tyres. So these are a set of Nankang AR1 semi-slick tyres. These are proper track day sporty tyres. These are going to make the car drive so much better in the dry. They're not going to make you drive better in the wet. In fact, they're really dangerous in the wet, so we want to make sure not to drive the car when it's raining. But in the dry, these are going to make the Fox stick to the road like nothing else, so let's get them on the wheels. But before we can get those tyres fitted, we of course need to go and pick the wheels up from 360 Alloys. Hello mate, you good? Mate, I can't wait to see what the wheels and the brakes are like. I am buzzing. As you can see, 360 Alloys have done an incredible job at refurbishing my wheels and brakes. If any of you guys need any similar work done or any body work done to your car, make sure to contact 360 Alloys. I'll leave all of their contact information in the description of this video. Well, what do we think of the wheels? I am in love with this paint. It's got sort of a sparkle to it, which definitely is going to set these wheels off. A few of you might think silver is boring, but I like silver, and it's definitely going to work with the end product of the Fox. And getting these wheels on with those calipers and all of the stuff we've already got on the car, it is going to look 10 out of 10. So let's get back to the unit and get it all fitted. So once we were back, we got the local tyre man to fit the tyres onto the wheels. So you are probably wondering why I have put these wheels and tyres on before fitting the brakes. The first reason is that I really want to see what this thing looks like with the coilovers on. We are just running the standard ride height that the BC coilovers come with, so we'll see if we need to go lower or higher when we get it down. But the second reason is that because we've done all of this suspension work, we've basically rebuilt everything in the wheel wells, we need to take this car for an alignment at Evolution Autoworks. So we've got that booked in and we need to leave now. So let's see what the car looks like first. Oh, it's properly sat down. Right, okay. That is so much lower. We still have a big wheel arch gap, so we have further to go. We will do some adjusting to the coilovers to make it even lower. But you cannot tell me it is like a completely different car now. So Adam from Evolution Autoworks soon came to pick up the car from the unit so we could take it to his workshop to get all of the alignment work done.
Here's the line.
Oh, this guy looks so good, man. Oh my God, look at the wheels. This looks insane. Oh, I cannot believe how good this looks. Adam, you cannot tell me that is probably one of the most masterful pieces of automotive engineering you have ever stepped foot in. Right, here's a question. Volkswagen Fox GTI or Aston Martin V8 Vantage? You have to let me know in the comments. I mean, if you're not saying Fox, you're just wrong.
Absolutely.
The Aston Martin is that's just the daily knockabout. That Fox is my pride and joy right there.
I'm stuck in space, got a daydream running through my brain every day.
So we soon arrived at Evolution Autoworks and we could get the Fox up on the ramp. Now the guys here are absolute experts. They do a lot of motorsport work alongside general mechanical stuff and they'll be sorting out the Fox with an amazing motorsport setup. So as for getting this thing aligned, we need to basically get it on these red alignment tables. Now, I'm not even going to pretend to understand how this works, but essentially you put a string around the car and you can measure things. Before we do so, we actually need to lower the coilovers because I mentioned they need to go lower because there's too much of a wheel arch gap, and to align it properly, the coilovers need to be in their sort of final position, their final like height for the alignment to work basically. So we're gonna do that, then get it aligned. So Adam could get out the C-spanners and start lowering the front coilovers. After the fronts were done, he could move on to the rears. Right, so the coilovers have now been lowered to their maximum amount, and yeah, it can't go any lower. So it's going to be very interesting to see how low the car is now the coilovers have been fully slammed. We're going to get the car on the ground and find out. That's it, is it? Damn, that still has a bit of wheel arch gap. But to be fair, these are for a Polo, these coilovers, which would make sense. Now, I think this is good actually. I think that's like a sporty.
It's usable.
That's usable, yeah. That's it, and it's not gonna like crash if I go over a speed bump. So after getting the car to its final ride height, Adam can work his magic by giving this car a string alignment. This basically involves getting the car on these red alignment tables and then hanging 2 strings on either side of the car, which are carefully centered to the chassis centerline. This basically gives you a reference so that you can measure the toe angles of each wheel individually. And after some measuring, the alignment adjustments can be made accordingly. So if any of you need motorsport work to be done to your project, or if you just want something to be fixed well, I'll leave a link to Evolution Autoworks in the description of this video. So the car has been aligned. We have now magically arrived here at the exhaust company, which a lot of you might guess, we are here to make an exhaust. Many of you know from the previous video that the Fox has a missing rear section, so we are here to get a new rear section built. Let's go. So after getting the car in the unit and on the ramp, we could start with planning the exhaust.
So we just need to make this bit go here with a little box.
A little box.
That's all we need to do. A hole out the bumper to make 2 exhausts come out.
Downturn.
A downturn.
Race car.
So as for getting this exhaust built, as I'm sure a lot of you know by now, a custom exhaust requires a load of skill, precision welding, cutting, measuring, all sorts of different processes, and the guys here at the exhaust company are experts. Right, so here it is. This is our new rear section. It is looking absolutely beautiful. We have gone for a silencer because we will be fitting a zero cell sports cat into this car at some point. Also, take a look at our new exhaust tip. We've got lots of pie cuts. I think this looks really cool, and it's going to sit sort of up here like that, and it's going to look absolutely beautiful. So let's get it on and see what it sounds like. So after getting the exhaust lifted into place, the last thing to do was to get some hangers made. Lav, ready when you are. Yeah, that sounds sick. Give it a couple flips. Yeah, that sounds awesome. So that is the exhaust done. It is looking so good. I love the downturned exhaust tip with the pie cuts. It is looking sensational. But now we can get the car back to the unit and get the brakes fitted. So along with our newly refurbished GTI brake calipers, we'll also be fitting these magnificent M-Tech drilled and grooved discs alongside some new EBC yellow stuff brake pads. These pads are a great compound for fast road and a bit of track use, and because our new discs are drilled and grooved, this is going to help with our heat dissipation, which will in turn help reduce brake fade. So starting with fitting the front brakes, the process here is the exact same as if I was just fitting these brakes onto the Polo, and that is because we have already fit the Polo hub assembly onto the Fox. So these new calipers are now a straight fit. So after installing the caliper carrier, I can then get the shims for the brake pads fitted, and then I can get the brake pads themselves in. The GTI caliper can then be installed, and then finally I can connect up the brake line. What do we think of the front brakes? Those are looking fantastic. They do look a little bit like Ronald McDonald's brakes. The colour scheme is very McDonald's-esque. But now that's done, we can move on to the other side, and then we have a disc conversion to do on the rears. So as for the rear brakes on the Fox, at the minute they are these drum brakes. Now manufacturers will fit a car with drum brakes because they are cheaper to make and maintain, but they have one serious flaw, and that is heat dissipation. Now if you're running a normal set of road brakes, generally more heat means worse braking performance. And the more you drive your car and the harder you push your brakes, the hotter they'll get. So these drum brakes are not very good when you push them. Now this isn't usually a problem with commuter cars because in the eyes of the manufacturer, you're never going to drive the car hard enough to actually notice a drop in braking performance. However, this Fox is quickly turning into a race car, so something needs to be done about these inferior brakes. So the solution is to do a caliper conversion on the rear, again using the Polo GTI brakes. Now for the most part, a caliper conversion is a lot easier said than done. It usually takes quite a lot of work, but on this Fox, you'll see that it's going to be a lot easier. So after taking off the drum brake, we have noticed something quite pleasing actually. So this is the standard Fox trailing arm, and you might notice that it literally comes with the brackets to bolt the caliper rail on, or the caliper carrier, which is so helpful. We won't have to do any modification to this. All we have to do is get the handbrake cable and the brake lines sorted out, which is very useful indeed. I think the reason why Volkswagen do this is because they like efficient production. So all of the models with calipers have the same trailing arm as this Fox, which has drum brakes, which makes this very easy. So before fitting the GTI brakes onto the Fox, I firstly had to take the handbrake cable and the brake lines from the Polo.
There we go. Nice. All right, brake lined. I got it. That is handbrake cable numero dos.
So much fast.
Yeah, well you know how to do it, it's like ding.
So once I had removed the handbrake cables from the Polo, I could then take the old cables out of the Fox. Once the old cables are out, I could then get the Polo cables fitted. After that, I swapped over the brake lines. So after making sure to do up the brake lines with the spanner, we could then get the GTI caliper setup fitted exactly as if we were fitting the brakes normally, because now these brakes are a straight fit. And whilst we were at it, I thought it was worth fitting some new bearings as well.
These are shims, and they're going in. Right, happy with that.
We could then get the other side done. So that is all of the brakes fitted, and we have just bled them off camera and all seems okay. But before we test them and get the wheels back on and test it to see if it works, we have two more modifications to make the handling even better. And that is, to start off with, these adjustable drop links, and they're going to sit sort of in between here and the anti-roll bar just in there, and that's going to make the steering responsiveness a bit better and reduce our body roll. And secondly, we have this strut brace, which is going to connect up the two top mounts of our shocks and make everything even more stiff and just make it into more of a race car. Now, a lot of you might be wondering how exactly the drop links will help the handling on the Fox, and it's not really the drop links themselves, but it's the anti-roll bar or the ARB. Now, the ARB connects the two front wheels together, and by doing this, it helps share the load when you're going around a corner, and this helps reduce body roll. Before fitting these drop links, the ARB wasn't doing anything because it wasn't connected up, but now that we are connecting it up, it's going to help increase the handling feel of this car. And as for this new cross brace, it basically connects the two suspension top mounts together, and this helps increase chassis rigidity. Once that was all done, I could then get the wheels fitted for the final time and add a little finishing touch. How good is it going to look on a scale of 1 to a million? The same, but with brakes and centre caps. This car is actually going to be so sick. It's such a sleeper right now.
Yeah.
Race car. they don't just work, they work tremendously well. It actually feels so much better. Wow. That has made a huge difference. For the next installment of progress on this car, we are taking inspiration from a slightly different company to Volkswagen. Lamborghini. A brand known for many things, but something I love is how they paint their cars with some of the brightest, most in-your-face colours you can possibly imagine. So naturally, I thought what a great idea it would be to paint our unassuming little Volkswagen Fox with a real Lamborghini colour. But these colours are really expensive and notoriously difficult to paint, so this might be easier said than done. So before we transform the Fox into a Lamborghini, there is a lot of prep work we need to get on with before we can actually get the car in the booth. Stuff like sanding, scotch brighting, priming, all of this stuff needs to be done before we get the car painted, so let's get started. Now, a lot of you might be wondering how I'm going to attempt to paint this car when I have zero body shop experience. And the answer to that is I'm recruiting my good friend Lav, who a lot of you might remember from when we painted the Honda Jazz. Lav has been painting cars for around 20 years, and not only is he supplying all of the specialist equipment that we actually need to do this properly, but he's also bringing with him all of the real body shop skills that I definitely don't have. So it's difficult to know where even to start with a paint job. It is such a massive task. There are loads of little jobs that need doing in this preparation process, but luckily we have 2 people on the job. So I'm gonna start with stripping stuff down whilst Lav starts with a bit of filler work. So before getting started, we made sure to protect the Jazz by putting this plastic over it. This is gonna make sure that any paint or dust doesn't get on the Jazz's fresh paintwork. We're treating this car like it's a 250 GTI. So after getting the Fox in the middle of the workshop, we could get started.
A heat gun, surely a heat gun will make this easier. If you can do that, I'll be very impressed.
We'll have the professional.
Okay. There's no way you're doing the F though. You have started with the X. The X has more corners than the F.
The F has got loads of corners. Do you want to do the O?
Yeah, I'll do the O. I can definitely do the O.
It's definitely moving, so it's not far off coming off.
Oh yeah. See look, the real professionals don't ping it across the workshop. The real professionals...
You're meant to ping it.
Now our little Volkswagen Fox is absolutely covered in small dents. So Lav's first job is to sand down the dented areas with the DA, mix up the filler with the hardener and apply this mixture to those dented surfaces. This will make sure that when we do come to paint the Fox, these dents won't be showing and the bodywork will look brand new. And whilst he was doing this, I could get on with the relatively simple task of taking stuff off the car. Now this attachment on the end of the drill is called a toffee wheel, and I'm using it here to remove all of the residual glue from these plastic trim pieces. So once Lav had finished applying the filler to the boot, he then had to wait for it to dry so he could give me a hand with some of the strip down. I think it's just a pry.
I don't know.
Oh, I don't want to break it.
Yeah!
What was it?
There's a clip.
Oh, right, okay, so... Oh, okay. Right, I see. That's how it works. Well, I should be able to now pull them off. Nice. Cool.
One door card.
Nice. So now the filler was dry, Lav could get out his sanding block and start working his magic. On video, this does look really easy, but sanding down filler is a job which requires a heck of a lot of skill and experience, because you're not just smoothing the surface down, you also need to actually shape the filler to match the lines and the angles of the bodywork. Meanwhile, I could continue with the strip down. And as I kept stripping stuff off the car, I eventually found the previous owner's solution to a broken window regulator.
OEM wood delete.
Yes. Yeah, they're putting OEM wood.
That's why the window doesn't work.
Yeah, I think, well, oh, is that why the window doesn't work?
Yeah, the regulator's gone.
And the previous owner decided that this was a good fix.
Yeah, that's the mintest fix you come across.
No,
What we're
not
doing-
new regulator, just plank of
Plank
wood.
of
Yeah,
wood.
plank of wood.
So with our OEM plank of wood removed, I kept on stripping the car whilst Lav continued to do the rest of the filler work, which was making our dented areas look better by the minute. And just like with the boot, after the filler was dry on this side, Lav could go over it with the sanding block. And he also went over all of the surfaces with the DA. Also, please make sure to click that subscribe button if you haven't already. 72% of you watching the channel are currently unsubscribed, so if you do enjoy these videos and you want to see more, or if you just want to support, smash that subscribe button. So, progress update, we have stripped some headlights, the bumper, the scuttle panels off, and Lav has done some great work here getting all of the filler done, and he's also DA'd the surfaces that haven't been fillered as well, just to sort of get it sanded down. And the back of the car, taillights are out, and back has been fillered, and we are yet to do this side of the car. So we've still got a lot of stuff to do, but we are making some good progress. So for the next few hours, we kept doing more of the same. There were a few final little bits that I had to remove off the car, and there were plenty more dents for Lav to fix, and a lot more bodywork that needed sanding down. So that is our pre-prep done. As you can see, the car has been somewhat stripped. It's been sanded down with the DA, and all of our dents have been filled in by Lav, and as you can see, they are looking great. Now we can move on to step 2, which is getting some degreaser on the car, and then we need to put something called high build primer over all of our areas of filler. The reason why we need to firstly degrease the car is because our next step involves painting on that special primer, and we of course do not want that primer to react to any unwanted oils or chemicals that might still be on the surfaces when we apply it. So putting on this degreaser all over the bodywork will make sure that doesn't happen. So as for applying the high build primer, before we can start, we've firstly got to mask off all of the other areas of the body that haven't had any filler work. So after getting all of the masking done, Lav could then begin applying the high build primer. Now the reason why this step is so important is because the filler that Lav applied earlier isn't smooth enough. Filler is technically porous and it has loads of little microscopic holes in it. So this layer of high build primer will help fill in all of those little imperfections in the filler so that after we sand it down later on, it will be a perfect surface to paint on. After going over everywhere once, Lav then had to do a second coat. So after the primer was dry, Lav's next task was to go over all of those primed surfaces with his sanding blocks. But before starting, he made sure to apply a light dusting of black aerosol paint to all of those primered sections. And the purpose of this is to just make sure that when it comes to sanding down the primer, it is a bit easier to see where you've been. Now, when it comes to actually sanding down the high-build primer, it has the same pitfalls as sanding down the filler. It's a very easy job to mess up. So, for example, if you accidentally dig in the edge of the sanding block or put pressure in the wrong areas, it can completely ruin the surface. So this, again, is a job that's better left for Lav. Right, so we can now move on to the next step of the prep. As you can see,
favourite job.
my least favourite job. Lav has already started it. It is Scotch Brighting all of the surfaces down with some water. So it's quite a long process. It is very tiring after a while, but let's do it. So Scotch Brighting is a job which requires a little bit of effort and elbow grease, but Lav assured me that you pretty much cannot get scotching wrong. It is as simple as it looks. You just need to scrub the surface. And by doing this, it will make sure to help with our paint adhesion when we come to apply the paint later on. And we were at this for quite a while because there was just so much to do. We had to remove the doors to get those properly scotched. We also had to scrub down the inside of the boot, the door shuts, and even places you won't see, like behind the rear bumper and behind the taillights. So once all of the Scotch Brighting was finished, we could then move on to prepping up the bumpers.
Lav, do you see all this dirt in the bumper?
Yeah, it's horrendous. Can't believe someone would leave it in there.
It's awful. Should we clean it or should we leave it?
No, leave it.
I think we should leave it.
Leave it for the next person.
It will make everybody really angry if we leave it.
Double it, pass it on.
Or double and pass it on.
So as for getting the bumpers prepped up, the first thing to do was to go over all of the surfaces with the DA. And on the front bumper that Lav was working on, he used a little bit of this red filler to help fill in all of the imperfections caused by stone chips. And after finishing up all of the work with the DA, we then had to go back to good old scotching. And there were still some final little bits that we had to scotch bright, like the door handles and the petrol filler cap. So the prep work on the Fox is now almost done. We are nearly there. We've done the Scotch Brighting, all of the filler work, the high-build primer. We've taken off all of the little bits like the wing mirrors and prepped those up, the filler cap. Now there is one big job that we still need to do before this car can get in the booth, and that is to remove this engine, because like the Jazz, we are not half-arsing this. We are going to paint the whole engine bay as well. So to do that, we need to prep up the engine bay and take the engine out. So let's do it.
You know that I won't lie like this. I don't wanna hide everything right.
So to remove the engine, the first thing I got on with was taking off the subframe.
That was very loose.
Crazy, but maybe we could be a thing. I'll give it one shot, make it hard, show me what you bring. No, no.
I also had to remove the front section of the exhaust.
One shot to a lifetime. Give you my all, yeah, one shot, make it hard. One shot.
So the next step was to take everything off the front. Bits like the intercooler, boost piping, the radiator and the crash bar.
Oh, so won't you stay a while, baby, you say it don't faze me.
I could then quickly remove our cross brace. followed by the air filter and the battery. And then I needed to disconnect the fuel lines and the vac lines.
Make it high, show me what you bring. No, don't stop, talk a lot, tell me what you think.
Next, I had to disconnect some electrical connections at the front of the engine. And then the final things to disconnect were the gear selector cables, followed by the clutch slave cylinder. Once all of that was done, we could get the pallet underneath the car, undo the engine mounts, and drop the engine out of the engine bay. So that is one engine out of one Fox. I feel like I'm getting dangerously efficient at doing that now. That literally took me an hour, which was pretty fast. So, but now that is done, we can move on to prepping up the engine bay. So just like the rest of the bodywork, the engine bay is going to need a heck of a lot of Scotch brighting, but firstly, there are a few things we've got to remove.
Heat of the summer, over desert land.
This includes stuff like the windscreen wiper motor, the sort of false bulkhead, and the whole body wiring loom.
But you quench my thirst, you're the only one living, and still you burn yourself.
So after giving the engine bay a little vacuum clean, Lav and I could then get on with the scotching.
So free, such a myth.
And we also had to scotch up the underside of the bonnet.
Keep going your way, don't ever change, baby.
Right, so that is the Fox completely prepped up. It looks unrecognizable from what it looked like at the beginning of this video, but this is just what you've got to do if you want to do a proper paint job. So we are now ready to get the car on the back of a recovery truck, take it to the paint booth, and get that Lamborghini colour painted on. We have arrived. It is a beautiful sunny day here in England. The Fox is now obviously really wet because it's just been through all the rain, so we're gonna have to dry it off when we get in. But we have now arrived here at the paint booth. But yeah, this is gonna be really cool. Hello. Hello. So before we could start, we firstly had to dry off the car because it was very wet from the rain. And once it was dry enough, we could get the car in the booth. So the car's now in the biggest paint booth on planet Earth. This place is huge, but we now need to take the doors off, take the boot off, and get everything masked up. We've got a load of different processes we need to do before we can actually get the paint on, so let's get started. This gun is a lot more angry than my Milwaukee. It's a lot angrier. It's yellow though.
I know, it's nice, isn't it? Look at the lights. Look at the lights.
But it's yellow. It's not red and it doesn't have a thunderbolt on the side. So Milwaukee! You can let me know in the comments whether you're team DeWalt or Milwaukee. But before we could start the final stages of the prep, we firstly had to hang up a few body panels. The next job for Lav to do was masking up all of the areas that we didn't want to paint. So that's stuff like the windows, parts of the bumpers, practically everything we didn't want to get paint on. Meanwhile, I could go over the car and do a bit of degreasing. Whilst doing some of the masking for the engine bay, Lav actually uses tin foil because it holds its shape and he finds it's a much better solution over just using tape and paper. The next things for Lav to mask up was the glass and the big holes where the doors and the boot usually sit. He also had to mask up the wheels, And then finally, he could get these last little pieces set up as well. So as you can see, absolutely everything on all of the different panels have been masked up properly by Lav. All of the glass, for example, on the boot and the grills and the plastics on the bumper, everything has been masked up properly. And now that's done, we can move on to a 3-step process that we need to do before we can get paint on the surface. And that is degreasing, tacking, and anti-staticking. So because we are nearly at the point where we are going to start painting the car, we need to make sure that absolutely every single surface is completely grease-free, because if any oils or chemicals or grease finds its way onto a surface that we're going to paint, it will completely ruin the paint job. As for the next step, tacking, it's basically where you run this tack cloth and an airline all over the surfaces that you're trying to paint. Now the tack cloth has this special ability to attract dust to it, meaning it will take dust off the surfaces that you're trying to paint. So basically, this is just a fancy process to remove dust. And as for the anti-staticking, essentially you use this anti-static gun which fires ionized compressed air which neutralizes any static charge. So doing this reduces the chance that any dust or other particles will be attracted to our body panels. So now that that 3-step process is done, Lav can finally start painting all of our parts and body panels. And of course, our first layer to go on is our primer. So now the primer layer has been applied, it is finally time to start painting on our colour. Now you all know I have chosen a real Lamborghini colour, but what colour specifically have I chosen? Well, I've gone for this. It's called Viola Parsife. This colour is absolutely gorgeous. It's a bright metallic purple paint with a pearlescent effect, and to actually get this colour on your brand new Lamborghini, if you were to buy one, costs $15,000 on top of the price of the car. So this colour is really special, even for a Lamborghini. So the fact we are putting this on a 700 quid Volkswagen Fox is quite funny. So once Lav had got on the first coat of our beautiful Viola Parsife paint, he then had to do a few more coats. And once all of that was done, Lav had to go around everything again to do a layer of clear coat. So we have now finally finished the paintwork. It's just finished baking in the oven. Let's have a look at how good this looks. You cannot tell me that is not like the most beautiful paintwork. This is a real Lamborghini colour on Volkswagen Fox parts. I bet that hasn't been done before. Look at the bumper. I genuinely cannot wait to get all this stuff like fitted on the car. Just look at that. It's got like this like flippy little slightly pearlescent sort of thing going on. This looks really, really cool. I'm really liking this colour. I think this colour is cooler than the Jazz's paint job. Look at the engine bay. Look at it. This looks so good. So all of the people who no doubt wanted this car red, you've got to admit that this purple is absolutely banging. And I think it works with the silver wheels. I think it works with the red brakes. I was sort of a little bit like, is it gonna work with those two things? But I think it does now that we're actually looking at it. And this purple just pops like genuinely no colour I've ever seen. It's got the sickest flip in the light. This is gonna look so cool when it's all back together. So let's get everything packed up, get the car back to the unit, and get all this car back together. So that is one Fox back here at the unit, and you might notice that we've had to put on the front bumper, the doors, the rear bumper and the boots for transport. So that's all on and it is looking pretty cool, but there are still a few things missing that I want to get on the car before we finish this video off, because I want to see sort of what that final product is going to look like. So we've got the tail lights here, we've got the fuel filler cap, wing mirrors, headlights. I want to get all of that on and then we can just sort of take a look at what this car looks like when it's done. There are still going to be a few things missing which we can address in the next video, but yeah, let's get all of that fitted. So once all of that was fitted, we could finally take a look at our end product.
Hey, yeah, let's see how you do under pressure. Oh, yeah, I've been wanting this shit forever. I've been in the field with whatever they throw at me. Brush it off, pick myself up, moving on to the better. Okay. Hey. Ain't no errors, baby, it's a new era. I wake up early feeling rich like I'm Kesha. I get to the paper, boy. Extra, extra.
So there we have it. The Volkswagen Fox now has a proper Viola Parsife Lamborghini purple paint job, and I think it is looking really cool. As I said earlier, I know a lot of you would have wanted it a more classical GTI red, but I just think this purple looks so good. And on top of that, Lav has done such a good job. It is literally a mirror finish on that surface. It looks so, so cool. Now we still have a few things to get on the car, like the scuttle panel, the indicator needs to go in, we need to put the door locks in, we need to put the number plates on, a VW badge here, the windscreen wiper on the back. There's lots of little things we still need to do, but it is really getting there now. A lot of you guys mentioned in the previous video that the paint isn't an absolute perfect finish, and that's because we haven't given it a polish. So Lav's come over to help us out with that. Let's get started. So to get the finish of the Fox's paint job looking better, Lav firstly went over the surfaces with 1500 grit sandpaper, a sanding block and some water. He then had to go over it with 3000 grit sandpaper, and then the final step was using the polish. And of course, he had to do this on all of the body panels on the car. And once Lav was done, the paint finish was looking a lot nicer. So now the polish is done, we can move on to another thing a load of you said in the comment section of the previous video, and that's to do with how both the front and the rear bumpers have been painted. Now, we left the plastic unpainted on the front and rear bumpers, and a few of you mentioned that the car looks cheap because we haven't actually painted these bits in the color. And after looking at it, I sort of completely agree. We just didn't think to do this when we painted the car. So what we're going to do is take the front and the rear bumpers down to 360 alloys on Bodyshop, and they're going to paint these like surround bits all in the purple, and then the grills themselves will go black. That's the plan. Let's go. So I could go ahead and take the bumpers to 360 Alloys and Bodyshop. These guys are absolute wizards with wheel refurbishments and bodywork, so we will come back later on in the video to see what the bumpers look like. So now that's done, we can move on to the main topic of today's video, and that is the interior on the Fox. Many of you who watched the Jazz project will know that we fit that car with a whole Type R interior, and I think it looked so cool. So we're going to do something similar with the Fox. A lot of you might know where I'm going with this. The Polo has a whole GTI interior in it. So we've got all sorts, like these seats which have this sort of GTI embroidery on there, which looks really cool. We've got this handbrake which has the red stitching on there to match. We can put that in as well. We've got the steering wheel which says GTI. You've got the red stitching on the inside. This looks really cool. We also also have the seat belts, which have a bit of red on them, which again looks cool, sets the GTI interior off. We also have the rear bench, which might be usable, might not sure if that's going to fit, but we will try it. So we've got loads of stuff in here which we can get in the Fox, or at least try to. But the first thing we need to do is take all of this out, so let's get started. Cool, that is one GTI handbrake. And that is one GTI seatbelt. Now, there are some good things and some bad things to report with all of this stuff. So with the Polo rear bench, as you can see, it's sort of a 1, 2, 3, 4-piece rear bench, which is very different to our single-piece rear bench out of the Fox. So they are very different, and unfortunately, we can't fit the Polo rear bench into the Fox. Another thing, both of the front seats out of the Polo will fit into the Fox, but we're going to need to do a bit of modification, and the driver's seat in particular is very worn down. This tartan just looks very faded, so that could do with being refreshed. So what are we going to do about these issues? Well, with the rear bench, we're going to fit the Fox bench back into the Fox, but before we do so, we're going to reupholster all of these centre bits in that lovely GTI tartan. And with the front seats, we're going to reupholster all of the centres to get them looking nice as well. So fresh GTI tartan is going to go on the seats. So we will end up having the Polo front seats and the Fox rear bench in the Fox, all refurbished and refreshed. Now, to get the seats reupholstered, I had to get them packed into the BMW and take them all the way up to Nottingham to Project 7 Customs. So whilst those seats are getting worked on, another job that I think really needs doing is these windows. I think they are absolutely crying out for some window tints, so the guys from D5 Graphics have come down to help us out. So tinting is a pretty intricate process where a piece of tinted film is applied to the inside of the window using a water-activated adhesive. Now, sometimes you will see tinters applying the film to the outside of the window, and this is to cut it into the right shape, and once that's done, the tint can be applied to the inside. And as for the level of tint I went for, I didn't want it too dark, so we went for a 50% tint just on the rear windows. So there we have it, the tints on the Fox have now been finished, and I think they are looking so good. Now obviously we didn't go as dark as the tints on the Jazz, because I wanted it to look sort of OEM and not too dark. I'm getting into my old age now, and I'm actually starting to like less dark tinted windows. But the guys at D5 Graphics did an amazing job, so big up to them. But now that is done, we can move on to stripping this interior out and getting a few little bits painted. So something else I'm not the biggest fan of in the Fox's interior is how half of it is like this cream colour. It's not very GTI, and I think it would be much better if all of this was painted in black. So to get that done, firstly, all of it has got to be removed. So after getting all of the cream coloured interior pieces out of the Fox, it was then time to get them painted black. Also, just a quick reminder to smash that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. It massively helps out the channel and allows me to keep bringing you videos just like this. So once I was finished with painting all of the interior trim pieces, I could then move on to dyeing the headliner. And this is such a simple process. All I did was just spray the dye onto the headliner using a spray bottle. Right, so our interior trim pieces are now painted and they are looking pretty good. Same goes with our headliner. That's ready to go in the car as well. But there is one more thing I want to get painted before we move on, and that is the plastics around the wing mirror, because obviously we're having our bumper painted in gloss black and purple, and to not have the plastics here painted in gloss black, I think would look weird. So let's get these painted too. So once I had taken off the wing mirrors, I could then focus on getting the plastic bits prepped for paint. I firstly used some water and a pad of Scotch-Brite to rub down all of these surfaces, and once I'd done so, I could then apply our primer layer. Followed by a couple of layers of gloss black. Once that was done, I then decided to do the exact same process again, but with the scuttle panel. Now at this point I couldn't get the scuttle panel fitted back onto the car because we hadn't yet installed the body loom and the wiper motor and everything that goes behind it, but I could get the wing mirrors back on. And I think this is a definite improvement from the old dull plastics. So now we've finished all the painting for the interior trim pieces. You might think we can just go ahead and get that all fitted into the interior, but we can't do it yet because we have this sound system to fit. Now, with a lot of the cars that I buy, because they're all quite bad from factory, the sound systems always need replacing because they're just terrible. So we have got a really good sound system here, about 400 quid's worth, 2 front subwoofers, 2 regular speakers for the rear, and then 2 tweeters as well, and some soundproofing and some sort of mounting collars as well. All of this stuff was supplied by John Cleese in Reading. They are my absolute go-tos for any audio stuff. So if you want to get a cool audio system, I'll leave a link to them in the description of this video. But yeah, this is going to completely transform that old rubbish speaker system in the Fox, so let's get this fitted. But before I can get the new sound system in, I've firstly got to reinstall the body loom. Now, I removed the body loom in the previous video so that we could properly paint the engine bay, so that's why it's currently not fitted. But because we are now fitting a new sound system which needs power from the battery to test if it works, we need to reinstall the body loom so that we can connect up the battery and give the car power. But whilst I was doing this, I thought I may as well get the whole engine bay back together. So that's stuff like the windscreen wiper motor, the scuttle panel, the coolant bottle, the washer bottle, and just little bits and bobs like that. Okay, so first things first, before we get our speakers in, we need to get this installed. This is a Bluetooth stereo, and this car currently doesn't have a stereo at all, so we have had no way of playing music through this car as of yet. So once we get this fitted, we can connect up our phone, verify that the current sound system does work, and then once that's done, we can get our new speakers fitted and hopefully have a sick sound system. So to get the stereo fitted and wired up correctly, I had to use an adapter harness which I bought from Halfords earlier and wire in the red wire from that adapter harness into the fuse box. Now, since the red wire controls when the stereo turns off and on, I had to wire it into a circuit in the fuse box that turns on when you switch on the ignition.
Now, with any luck, actually turn on. Yes!
Okay, so we can see that our new stereo does have power to it, but if we quickly test it, we can also hear the speakers work.
Let's see how you do under pressure.
So this is really good news. It means that we can now get our new upgraded speakers installed. So starting on the driver's door, I could firstly drill out the rivets that hold in the old speaker. Now, before getting the new speaker fitted, I'm just going to install some sound deadening, which will help increase the sound quality of the speakers. So now that's done, I can worry about connecting up the wires. Now, there are 2 wires that go into the speaker, the positive and the negative. So to get these wires connected to our new speaker, I firstly got to strip both of the wires and then crimp on some terminals. Once that's done, I can connect up the positive wire to the positive side of the speaker, the negative wire up to the negative side, and then I can get the speaker riveted into place. Once that was done, I could then do the exact same process again with the passenger door speaker. Then I could move on to the 2 rear speakers.
Magnifique. That's good, doesn't it?
Side, just one more to go.
One more to go.
So after getting the final big speaker on the other side fitted, I could then move on to the tweeters. So to get these new tweeters installed, I firstly had to remove the old tweeters from the A-pillar trim piece. I could then strip the 2 wires from the tweeter plug and the 2 wires from our new tweeter and crimp these wires together. Whilst doing this, I of course needed to make sure that I was crimping the positive to the positive and the negative to the negative. Once that was done, I could glue the new tweeter into place, and this is what that end result looked like. After all of that, I could then get the A-pillar trim piece installed whilst making sure to plug in the new tweeter. And after doing the exact same thing on the other side, we were then finally finished with installing this sound system. So that is our sound system fully fitted into the Fox, and we've got 6 new speakers in here now, so this should be pretty good. That is so much better. That is loads better than the Jazz. That is really loud, which is really good. I'm very happy with that. Now we can finally get our interior in. So to start getting the interior back together, I firstly tackled the boot. Now the boot was stripped from the paint job in the previous video and it needed to be built back up. So I had to reroute the boot wiring loom and then fit parts like the rear wiper, the boot lock, and the brake light, and also plug in the heated rear screen. This was a pretty time-consuming, fiddly job, but we did manage to get it done. The next parts to get in were the GTI seat belts, and whilst I thought they might be a straight fit, they actually weren't. We did have to do a bit of modification, which was fairly easy to get done, and that then allowed these belts to be bolted straight in. After I'd finished fitting all of the seat belts, I could then get all of our interior trim pieces fitted. After getting the headliner fitted, I could then get the passenger roof handle installed, alongside the sun visors and the roof light. And then I could fit the rest of the interior trims. And whilst doing this, I could also get in the door rubbers. And lastly, I could refit the passenger window glass, window rubber and door card. Now, getting the window rubber in does require a bit of persistence, and I also used a bottle of soapy water to help sort of slide that window rubber into place. And after finishing up with that, the passenger door card could go on. And then the interior was looking a lot more complete. Right, so that is now most of our interior fitted back in. We've got our door, passenger door, completely built back up with the glass in. We have our new GTI seat belts. These are really cool and they fit, and I'm really glad they fit. We've got our black headliner, our black sort of side trim pieces, our sun visors, the light's been painted black as well. Everything is in, is looking really, really cool. But now we can move on to getting all of our new GTI parts fitted. So doesn't all of this stuff just look really, really cool? I am so pleased with this. We've got our front seats, which have been completely refreshed. They're looking really cool. And our Fox rear bench with the new tartan on it. Now, this material is from the Mark 7 Golf GTI, I believe, and it is much more vibrant and it has completely transformed these interior pieces. And we also have our little gear gaiter as well with the same material on it. So I am really, really pleased with all of this, and it's ready to go in the car, so let's get it fitted.
So getting these interior bits in is actually the easy part. It doesn't take too long at all. I started off with installing the center console, which is only held in with 2 screws, and then the gaiter just sort of clips into place. I then moved on to fitting the GTI handbrake, which is held in with 2 nuts, and I also had to tighten up the handbrake cables with a 10mm spanner. And I could also get the steering wheel in. And as for getting in the rear bench, I've just got to maneuver it into place and then tighten up these 4 13mm nuts. And then finally, I could install both of the front seats, which like every other car, just has 4 bolts holding them in.
Right, so that is our GTI interior fully fitted into the Fox, and just take a look at how good it looks. I am so pleased with this. We've got our steering wheel, which admittedly probably needs a bit of a refurbish, but it still looks a lot better than what was in here before. We've got our gear gaiter, which now matches the GTI tartan on the seats, which looks really cool. We've fully got this door back together. Our sound system's in, our GTI handbrake is in, and that's looking great as well. And we've also got our GTI seat belts, which are really cool. And everything now matches the rear, which has, again, the matching seats, the matching seat belts, and all of the black headline and the black trim pieces. All of that is looking great as well. Now, we have not done anything about this door because we tried to fit a window regulator earlier, which didn't fit. The right one has now arrived, so we need to get this door completely built back up. But once that's done, we can take a look at the bumpers that we dropped off at 360 Alloys earlier in the video, and trust me, they look amazing. So let's get this done and then take a look at those bumpers.
So a lot of you might remember in the previous video that we found a plank of wood holding up the driver's window, and the reason why the previous owner decided to do this was because the driver's window regulator was broken. So to allow us to have a fully functioning driver's window, the regulator needs to be replaced with a new one. And doing this is pretty simple. The new regulator just needs 3 rivets to install it. Once that's done, I can get the driver's window in, test to see if it all works, and then get the inner window rubber installed alongside the door card.
So that's our door fully built up and back together. Now that it's done, I can show you our bumpers that have come back from 360. So I am gonna have to humbly accept that all of the people who told me to do this were 100% right, and I was wrong for not doing this to start off with. But just take a look at how much better that front bumper is looking than it used to look. It's got the black grills now and the sort of colour matched bottom piece, which looks so good. The finish on that is amazing as well. And we also have our rear bumper, which has also been colour matched with the Viola Parsifal. We've got, that used to be obviously that plastic, and that's now purple, which looks really, really good. So I just wanted to say a massive thank you to 360 Alloys for getting that done. They look absolutely amazing, and if any of you guys need wheel refurbishments or bodywork done to your car, make sure to give them a call. I'll leave all of their contact information in the description of this video, but for now, let's get these on.
So getting these bumpers back on the car just felt so good because they look so much better now, thanks to 360 Alloys. And with these bumpers, the car definitely looks even more GTI spec. And also, to add the cherry on the cake, I had to get on some final finishing touches, which included some new badges, and of course, some new number plates.
There ain't no satisfaction for me now. There ain't no satisfaction for me now. There ain't no satisfaction for me now. Now that you're gone, now that you're gone, now that you're gone.
Well, I have to say, the Fox GTI is looking magnificent. I think the car is really coming together. The front bumper is definitely one of the main things that has made this car look loads better. You were all right in the comment section. This needed to happen and it looks so good. Obviously, our interior, the main topic of today's video, looks so good. I am really pleased with how that all turned out. It is looking 10 out of 10. And the back of the car is also looking really cool. Obviously, we've got our badges, our number plate, and our little GTI badge, which I know a lot of you might hate, but I think the car has earned that badge. We've got the GTI interior, we've got the wheels, the brakes, the engine, we've got everything on the car, and I think it is truly a Fox GTI now. Now, obviously, there is one thing which we have not put back in the car, and that is, of course, our engine. The car is a lot lighter as well on this front, so it's there's a bit more of a wheel arch gap than there would be, so it doesn't look quite as good. But the next video is going to be us putting the engine back in, and not only putting the engine in, but putting a load of upgrades on the engine to make it a heck of a lot faster. Now, unfortunately, before we get on with any of that, there has been a bit of a problem which is going to stop us from chasing those really high power figures. I got scammed.
Now, to give you all some context, you're going to need to know what a forged engine is, and in short, it's basically an engine which has had its internals strengthened to handle a lot more power than would otherwise be possible on the stock internals that came with the car from factory. So, for example, this might take the form of replacing the standard rods and pistons with newer, beefier ones.
Now, with this GTI engine, the weak point is the rods. If you try and put silly power through this engine, the rods are likely going to bend and cause catastrophic engine failure. So, me being me, I thought, let's fix that, and I bought this.
A forged 1.8 turbo GTI engine, which crucially has had the rods replaced with stronger ones, which in theory would allow us to run ridiculous power with this Fox.
However, when this engine arrived, it was not good news. There was water all inside where the spark plugs normally sit in the head of the engine, and there was rust on the valves, alongside rust in the cylinders as well. This obviously isn't great, but at this point I decided, look, let's try and fix this engine. But then I took the sump off and saw how many metal shavings were in the oil pickup and in the sump itself, and at that point I decided this engine is a lost cause. So where does that leave us? Well, I have definitely learnt my lesson about buying forged engines off Facebook Marketplace, but in this video, the plan is to try and squeeze as much power as possible out of the standard engine, and I have bought a load of power upgrades to make that happen, so let's get into it.
So, horsepower. How do we achieve more? Well, the theory is pretty simple. As I'm sure all of you know, each internal combustion engine has cylinders where combustion occurs, and all you have to do to make more horsepower is to make that boom in the cylinders bigger, which needs two main things: more fuel and more air. So throughout this video, each modification that we do is either going to help us get more air and fuel into the cylinders, or it's going to help our engine and drivetrain cope with this higher power so that nothing breaks and everything functions as it should. Now, considering that the Polo GTI, which our engine came out of, had 150 horsepower from the factory, let's see how much we can improve on that in this video.
So the first upgrade to try and help us squeeze as much power out of our engine as possible is actually nothing to do with the engine itself and everything to do with what I've got on the floor here. Now, this is a fuel pump which I've taken out of Boris, and the reason why I've taken this out of Boris is because this is an upgraded fuel pump. It's called a Walbro 255, and they don't actually make one of these for the Fox. I've searched it and they don't make one, which is no surprise because not many people modify these cars. So essentially I've taken this out of Boris, and you can see literally in there, that's sort of the fuel intake. It sits in the fuel tank like that. The fuel gets sucked up into that little sort of intake, and then it comes out of there, and the pump is like pumping all the fuel, and it goes out of there, and it should pump as much fuel as possible, 255 litres per hour, which is sort of where it gets its name, Walbro 255. And basically, this is going to help us get more power because it's going to help us get as much fuel as possible from the tank to our engine. So what the plan is I'm going to try and get this into the Fox's fuel basket, which is apparently, very small, and this might not fit. But to me, this looks like a pretty dainty fuel pump, so let's try and get it in.
So first things first, to remove our standard fuel pump, I started by taking out the rear bench. That then allowed me to access the top of the fuel tank, where I had to undo a couple of electrical connections and also both the return and feed fuel lines. And then using a hammer and a screwdriver, I could undo the top of the basket and remove it.
Okay, here we go. Well, that's out now. This is our lever. That sits on there, and the fuel puts that up and down. And this is like a little measuring thing there, and that tells us where your fuel gauge is, you see?
Yeah.
Brains.
Whoa, he's a professional.
Nice. Nice, there we go.
So now that I've got the fuel basket out of the fuel tank, I can get on with removing our standard fuel pump. But before doing that, I actually want to permanently remove the fuel pressure regulator that sits in the fuel basket. And the reason for this is because on the GTI engine, it actually has a fuel pressure regulator on the fuel rail already. So this one has got to be removed. But once I'm done with that, I can then take out the standard fuel pump. So we've done a bit of digging off camera, and to my disbelief, the micro fuel pump will in fact work with the Fox. So this is our Fox fuel pump, and this is our micro high-powered 255 Walbro fuel pump. And as you can see, I have fit this plastic sleeve over it, which used to hold this into place. But as you can see, it literally fits perfectly on our high-powered micro fuel pump. And on top of that, the little filter that sits on the bottom of the Fox fuel pump fits perfectly on the bottom of the mic. I mean, it is absolutely unbelievable that this works. I am genuinely in shock. This is probably like a 1 in a million chance. So anyways, all we need to do now is get this fitted into the fuel basket, get everything wired up correctly, and then, yeah, get it installed. So with the knowledge that our micro fuel pump would work with the Fox, I could then get it installed into the Fox's fuel basket. Now, because this micro fuel pump is a little bit taller than the Fox's fuel pump, I did have to hold it down with a cable tie. And before tightening that up, I had to connect up the fuel pump to the top of the fuel basket with a rubber fuel line. And then the final step to complete our beautiful fuel pump setup was to get the fuel pump power wires reconnected up, and then we were finished. So now it is time for the moment of truth. I've attached a white fuel line to the fuel feed in the engine bay, and we can now see if our fuel pump bodge has worked. So all I'm going to do is half turn the ignition, and hopefully fuel should come out of that fuel line. Let's give it a go. Right. 3, 2, 1. Okay, the fuel pump's not priming. Oh. I'm so confused. So the fuel pump wasn't priming. To double check everything that we did, I took the basket back out of the tank and used a battery and some wires to get power to the pump, and strangely enough, it was working. You can hear that our fuel pump is working when we connect up this battery. So I then put the basket back in the car and checked all of the fuses and the relays, but nothing was fixing it until I tried something by accident. Here's the theory. The theory is, if I turn the key and open the door, no way! Did that come out? Yes! 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 Oh my God. Maybe that whole time, it was just the fact that the door was open.
I think so, maybe.
I'm such an idiot. Right, so now that our fuel pump is in and actually working, we can move on to power upgrade number 2, which is this. This is a clutch and flywheel assembly. Now, the eagle-eyed viewers among you might remember that we fit a new clutch
to the engine before getting it in for the first time. And you might be wondering, well, why am I now fitting another new clutch? And the reason why is that that clutch was just like a new standard clutch. This is an upgraded Sachs VR6 clutch, which should be able to handle a lot more power. And alongside that, we've also got our flywheel. Now, this is a single mass flywheel, which is a lot lighter than our dual mass flywheel, which is currently in the engine, which should not only help us rev up even faster, but also give us just an extra little bit of power. So we're going to get this installed. Let's get into it.
So in order to get our new clutch and flywheel fitted, we firstly got to remove the gearbox. Now, whenever I remove a gearbox, it always helps me to use a piece of cardboard as a sort of diagram of the bolts, so I know which bolts go where when I come to refit the gearbox. Once I had removed all of the bolts, I could then try and wiggle the gearbox free. And once that was done, it was then time to remove our old clutch, which, as you can see, doesn't really look that old. And then I had to take off the old flywheel. Then it was time to get our new flywheel fitted. Now, when doing so, it is important to torque the bolts up correctly. So for my engine, it was 60 Newton meters per bolt, followed by a 90-degree turn. And after that was on, it was then time for the clutch to go on, making sure to use the clutch alignment tool. And the bolts had to be done up to 20 Newton meters each in a sort of cross pattern. And once all of that was done, it was then time to get the gearbox refitted. And this is now a lot easier thanks to my cardboard bolt diagram.
So our gearbox is now back on the engine and our flywheel and clutch have been successfully fitted. So now we can move on to power mod number 3. My favourite power mod, a new turbo. Now you might think, that turbo looks quite small. Well, it is, but this is a hybrid turbo, meaning it's got sort of a new impeller and everything is made more efficient in there to make more boost and a faster spool as well. So we need to replace our standard turbo with this one, so let's get it on.
So to get our new turbo installed, of course, I've firstly got to remove the old one. And in terms of doing so, there's just a list of things that I've got to remove. So I started off by taking off the red intake pipe. Then there was some boost piping to remove. And after that, there was a heat shield just above the turbo that I wanted to take off just to get it out of the way. And I also had to remove all of the water and oil lines, which are of course responsible for making sure the turbo is cooled and lubricated. The last bolts to remove were the 3 that mount the turbo onto the exhaust manifold, and once those were undone, the turbo could be taken out.
So here we have our old turbo, and here we have our new turbo looking much nicer. And also something else you might want to take a look at is sort of that centre shaft. As you can see, all around that sort of centre bit of the turbo, there's a load of oil, which is definitely not good. So it's definitely good we're replacing this. And also the centre shaft has a fair bit of play in it as well. So this turbo was definitely on its way out. Let's get our new one fitted.
So once I had fitted the coolant return line to our new turbo, I could go ahead and get it installed. Now before getting the oil feed and coolant feed lines fitted, I firstly gave the turbo a little injection of oil, just to make sure on first start it's nice and safe. And once I had taken that precaution, I could then get the coolant and oil feed lines fitted. I then moved on to tightening up the 3 exhaust manifold bolts, followed by plugging back in the coolant return line, alongside the oil return line. I also had to do up the bottom bracket of the turbo that helps support it, and finally it was back on with the boost piping and the heat shielding. Also, just a quick reminder to smash that subscribe button if you haven't already, because it massively helps me bring you even more content just like this. Something else that we now have to address is how the compressor housing on our old turbo is actually a lot smaller than the compressor housing on our new turbo. This means that our old red intake pipe will not work because, to put it simply, it just won't fit. So to fix this, I have bought a new black intake pipe, which is the correct size. Now, when fitting this, we've also got to make sure to connect up all of the necessary little bits and bobs, such as our recirculation valve and also the N75, which is a very important electronic solenoid, which helps us control the boost level of the turbo. Once all of that's done, we can finally install our mass airflow sensor, or MAF for short, and we will also be upgrading this from our Polo GTI MAF to this new wider diameter Audi S3 MAF.
Nice.
It is.
Send messages to the engine.
Literally.
Go faster.
Right, so now that our intake is fully together and ready to go, we can move on to a couple of things we need to remove. So firstly, all of these noodles on top of the engine, and on top of that we can do a secondary air pump delete, which is this, all of these big black pipes, and then also this underneath the inlet manifold as well. So we can take off a lot of stuff, which is going to help us remove a bit of weight from the engine, but also it just helps reduce our complexity, and it also makes our engine look a bit nicer as well. So let's get on with it.
So the name of the bunch of noodles on the top of the engine is the N249 system, and it's basically a system that allows the recirculation valve to be controlled electronically by the ECU, but it is not essential, and it's a very common system to be removed from these engines.
There it is. It's all unnecessary, all of this stuff.
So once I had removed the N249 system, I then had to plumb a new vacuum line all the way from our forge recirculation valve to the inlet manifold so that it could have vacuum. And once that was done, I could get on with removing the secondary air intake system.
There it is. Oh, okay, that's that. So now that is done, the engine is looking a lot nicer. We can move on to power upgrade number 4, and it is what's in this box. Now, these are supposedly R8 coils. That's what everyone in the Volkswagen scene calls them, and they're very fancy looking coil packs, and supposedly they give you a better spark and they help you run a bit more power. I'm not 100% sure whether that is true, but they will look pretty cool in our engine bay, so let's get them in. I don't know how much horsepower that's going to give us, but it gives us at least 5 for the looks, I think. Power upgrade number 5, we have got these. These are injectors, as a lot of you will be able to tell, and they are out of an Astra VXR, and they are 470cc. So obviously we're not going to be using this fuel rail, just the injectors themselves. And obviously we upgraded our fuel pump at the beginning of this video. That's going to make sure the fuel gets to our fuel rail, but to actually make sure that the fuel gets into the cylinders in the quantity that we need it, we needed some bigger injectors. Now these are really, really going to help us push those high horsepower figures, so let's get them in.
So to remove the fuel rail, there's just a few electrical connections to undo and a couple of H5 bolts.
There we go.
Then to take out the standard injectors from the fuel rail, I had to take off these clips, and then simply they can be pulled out.
So with these injectors, when you're fitting them, you want to make sure that these O-rings around the bottom and around the top remain undamaged, because obviously you don't want fuel leaking all over your engine. That would be very bad. So what I've seen on some forums is you can actually use a bit of Vaseline and just sort of rub it around the rings to help it sort of slide into place without damaging the O-ring. So let's give it a go. Nice. That worked really well, actually.
Once our new injectors were fitted onto the rail, I could then get our rail fitted back onto the engine. And once the rail was refitted, I could then get all of the electrical connections back in place and connected up.
Well, I'm not sure about you guys, but I think the engine is looking better by the minute. It's looking like a proper race car engine with our new coil packs, our injectors, our big turbo around the back, and our clutch and flywheel. Now, there are still a couple of things we are missing, like the blanking plate for where the secondary air pump would be, and also an air filter for this MAF. We are just waiting on those things to arrive. But other than that, this engine is now ready to go back in the car, which brings me on to another modification I have bought for it, which is a new set of engine mounts. So these are a set of Vibratechnics engine mounts, and don't they just look beautiful? I love these. They're a really good set of engine mounts, and they're going to make sure our engine is nice and secure in the engine bay. Obviously, this engine is a lot heavier than the 1.4 that was originally in the Fox, and on top of that, now we're going to be running a lot more power. There's going to be more torque going through the wheels, which is even more reason for us to fit a good set of engine mounts so we can get these fitted alongside the engine.
So of course, before installing the engine, I firstly had to get the driver's side chassis leg engine mount bolted in, and also the passenger side one as well. So once both of our beautiful Vibratechnics engine mounts were bolted in, we could then use our trusty technique to install an engine by lowering the car over the engine with our 2-post ramp. Now, when doing this process, it's important to communicate with whoever is operating the ramp so you can check for clearance and avoid crashing into things. But once it's roughly into place, the engine can then be bolted up. And then, just like that, we are one step closer to hopefully building the fastest Volkswagen Fox in the world.
So the engine is now in, and I think we're making some pretty good progress. Right, so now that our drive shafts are in, we can move on to the final power upgrade that I've got planned before we take the car for a remap, and that is a downpipe. So this is a 3.5-inch downpipe from Traxlag, which is quite a funny name. And basically what this is going to allow us to do is help our engine breathe better. It's going to allow us to sort of expel the exhaust gases fast enough for the power that we're aiming for. So this is an absolutely essential upgrade. So let's get it on the car.
So to get the downpipe installed, I firstly got to fit on this adapter pipe, and the reason being is that the diameter of the downpipe is actually more than the rest of the exhaust. And once that was done, I could then lift the downpipe into place. Now, when doing this, it does require a bit of manoeuvring and trial and error. Then I had to bolt the downpipe up to the exhaust side of the turbo, of course making sure to remember the gasket. And honestly, an Allen key was the only way I could find I could properly tighten up these bolts. One other thing I had to remember to install was a new lambda sensor, which just screws into place, and then you've got to use a 22mm spanner to tighten it up.
So that is our downpipe installed, and I think that is looking absolutely awesome. Now, this is a really important modification for chasing those high horsepower figures, so I'm really, really glad we've done this. Also, another quite funny thing is our exhaust system is such a Frankenstein. We've got this track slag downpipe at the front. We have a Miltech exhaust system in the middle, and then all the way around to the back, we have a really cool custom fabricated rear section built by the guys at the exhaust company. So I actually really like our little mishmashed exhaust. So now that's done, we can move on to just getting this car back together. Now, you have already seen me do this a million times, so we're just gonna try and bang it out as fast as possible.
So to start off with, I could bolt up the subframe, and I have done this about 20 times now, so I feel like I could do this in my sleep.
See you on the coast now, and out the window with your guard down.
After that, I could install the downpipe exhaust rubber bracket, which is just held on with 4 nuts.
That is solid. Nice.
Reveal nothing's really what you feel. I could've warned ya.
And then I could install the final Vibrotechnics engine mount, and this one sits inside the subframe, and it's called the dog bone mount.
Yes. Oh, that was effort.
So now that everything underneath the car was done, I could then get it back down and start installing the fuel lines. Next, I had to bolt in the clutch slave cylinder, and then I also had to connect up the gear selector cables. That then allowed me to install the battery and also sort out a lot of the loom that sits at the front of the engine. I also had to get the ECU connected up and installed. Our new air filter and blanking plate had just arrived, so I could go ahead and get those fitted too. We are almost there now. I just had to get this front rad pack bolted on, which includes our intercooler, the crash bar, and the radiator. The last things to get connected up were the boost pipes and also the radiator hoses. And then I could finish up by getting the bonnet latch in and also fitting back on the wheels. So now the car was fully back together, the last thing I had to do was test to see if it would start.
Okay, so the plan is, if it does fire up, I'm just gonna turn it off straight away, because if it fires up, that's all the confirmation I need that the engine still works for mapping, which is tomorrow, so. Yes! Okay, all right. It was running awfully, but that is to be expected because the car has got a load of new parts on it, but that is so good. Oh my God, the amount of work that it's taken to get to this point. Come on. Today is mapping day. The car runs, the car drives, which means that's all it needs to do for us to be able to get this car on a dyno and hopefully squeeze as much power as possible out of this engine. So all we've got to do now is get this car on the back of a trailer and take it to TRS Performance. So we have arrived here at TRS Performance and the guys have already put a base map on the ECU, basically scaling in our bigger VXR injectors and also our bigger MAF sensor as well. So it's actually running a lot better now than it was before with obviously no base map, but now it is time to get the car on the dyno and start doing some power runs.
So this is the moment that weeks worth of research, parts hunting, planning and working on this Volkswagen Fox has all led up to. How much power can this car make after all of the effort? Now, the type of dyno we'll be using is called a hub dyno. Many of you might be familiar with rolling roads, but this type of dyno is actually more accurate and will give us the exact reading of horsepower that our engine can now produce. Now, to get the car mounted onto this type of dyno, we've actually got to take off the wheels and also remove the brakes and then fit on this adapter plate, which then bolts up to the dyno itself. And honestly, I would be lying if I said I wasn't a little bit nervous.
Okay. The tension. You could carve it with a knife. I don't get nervous.
After getting the car fully mounted up on the dyno, we could do power run number 1. And the purpose of this is to just get a safe baseline figure of horsepower to then start building from.
Should we go in now? What's the news?
So we put some base tuning on there. We're seeing 212 horsepower. We capped the boost so far. Now it's time to turn her up.
Okay, so we started, that's power run number 1. We've just got like a really sort of low base map on there, 212 horsepower. Yeah, so 212 horsepower for power run number 1. Now we can sort of start turning it up.
Crank her up, baby.
All right, let's do it.
But unfortunately, things are never that easy. This is where we ran into our first problem.
Right, power run number 2. That didn't sound so good. That sounded interesting.
Yeah, a little bit of a misfire.
Bit of a misfire was there?
Yeah, a bit of a misfire. We're still making the boost though.
Are we not?
No.
So essentially we think the problem is the N75, which is it's like a solenoid on top of the engine, and it basically has got a load of vac lines going into it, and we think that might have gone kaput, which is meaning we can't give the turbo can't produce more than 7 psi of boost, right?
Yeah, exactly.
We can't ask it to produce anymore, even though we're asking it to produce like 1.3 bar at the minute.
Exactly. So we're asking 1.3 bar and getting 0.5 bar, which is just actuator pressure.
But at 0.5 bar, we're producing 215 horsepower. Which is good, and we've still got 275 newton meters of torque, which is good at that level. We just need to turn it up, but we just can't turn it up.
We're asking it to do it, and it just won't deliver it.
Okay, so we just basically may need a new N75.
Maybe just an N75 out.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Well, that's not the end of the world, really. No. It's not the end of the world. An easy fix, but probably won't be able to get our hands on one today. We are back. It has been 3 days, 3 nervous days trying to get everything sorted out with the car. Now, obviously we mentioned that the N75 was faulty. Well, that's what we suspected. Since then, a new N75 has arrived, and Pete here at TRS Performance has fit the new N75, and now we have boost control, which is really, really good. So it was a faulty N75 that was causing our issues 3 days ago. So now we've got a fully functioning boost control system. We can now do some proper power runs, not 215 horsepower. That was very underwhelming. So we're going to get the car back on the hub dyno. Well, it's already on there, as you can see. And we are going to really try and shoot for, over 250. So let's give it a go.
So now that we were all feeling optimistic that our problem was solved, we could then go ahead with power run number 3.
I am very, very excited. Honestly, I have no idea what it's going to make. If it makes over 250 horsepower, this thing will be an absolute weapon. Right, we're going. What is it saying?
What's it saying? So far, 336 meters, 275.
275 horsepower. It is so loud in it. So that run was a 275 horsepower run. 275 horsepower, and that is, and we've still got our revision to go, so we're going to turn the boost up even more. So it's going to be even more powerful than that. That is ridiculous. This is a Volkswagen Fox. This thing came out of the factory with 73 horsepower.
Lost 200.
Honestly, Lotus Exiges, Porsche Boxsters, Porsche Caymans, this would be faster than all of them in a straight line. See, we've still got one revision to go, meaning Pete is going to turn the boost up even more. It's currently sat at about 1.1 bar. We're going to go to 1.2, I think, and see what that does. But yeah, 275 horsepower.
So Pete could then go and work his magic and turn up the boost, and then it was time for power run number 4.
Talk to me.
Went up a little bit.
284.
It's a little bit more, but there's more to go, definitely.
284, 348 newton meters torque. That's decent. That's really good.
I think it'll take more though.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it'll take more.
So after getting a taste of what this car is actually capable of, both Pete and myself genuinely thought this car was capable of over 300 horsepower on the standard engine, until, I'm not even joking, something else broke.
Frustration. Honestly, so annoying. Something really, really small has broken. As you can tell, we are no longer at TRS performance. We are back at the unit, and this code started coming up when we were doing power run number 5. And as you can see, it says low pressure between the turbo and the inlet manifold. And essentially what that means is we have a boost leak somewhere. Now, I checked all of the boost pipes, they all seemed okay. But if you look on this code, it actually says check DV, check diverter valve. I've been calling it a recirculation valve throughout this video, but it's the same thing. And essentially, it's this little thing in here. When we're making our boost at full throttle, all of the boost is going through our boost piping here, and it also comes up through this pipe into the diverter valve there. And on full throttle, that diverter valve should be completely closed so that no boost gets let out. But what we think is happening is that diverter valve has gone kaput, and we are losing boost pressure, meaning that even though we turned the boost up for power run number 5, so that we thought it would run 300 horsepower, it's actually only running 250 because it's losing that boost pressure. So I have bought a new diverter valve and new diverter valve piping from the boost pipes to the diverter valve, because if that was leaking, that could have also been the problem. So I've got the new piping and the new diverter valve, and we're going to fit it now, see if it fixes our issue. And here is our new diverter valve. Now this is from Forge, and it's a pretty cool diverter valve. It actually comes with springs for the level of boost that you're running. The green one is the one that's just like sort of low boost. This one is sort of medium boost, like up to 17 PSI, I believe. That's the one we should be running, but I've gone ahead and put the blue one in, which is for even higher boost. And essentially the reason is I just don't want this to leak. So if we put a stronger spring in there, the likelihood that it leaks is lower. Anyways, let's get this new one on. Undo him, undo him. Ouch. All right, there we go. So that's our old one. That's what we think is the culprit. This is our new one. They are quite similar, actually. They are both from Forge. But again, this has been on, that was on, do you remember the old Polo? Yeah. This was on the old Polo, so it could be like donkey's years old. We don't know. Exactly. This is a lovely new one. And I bought it with my own money. It's £170, which gives me confidence that it's going to work. Because they can't charge 170 quid for something that doesn't work. We're literally just going to replace this first. And I'm going to inspect this for any leaks. Looks fine to me. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, it should be fine. I just want to check if this works first. And then we've got to get our vac line. This is what sort of opens it. We build vacuum up from the inlet manifold, and that sort of opens it when it's off throttle. So it goes, when you're going, whoosh, take your foot off the throttle, it goes, whoosh. Yeah. And because when you take your foot off the throttle, this throttle valve closes, creates a vacuum in here, and then that vacuum pulls through here and pulls that diverter valve up and goes, whoosh, and that lets all the boost out. Pretty cool. that is our new diverter valve fitted. So essentially, I don't think that is going to solve our issue until we clear the codes. There he is. Yeah. Exactly what I thought. So the EML, the one on the bottom right, is still on. Right, so we are now back here at TRS Performance with the Fox, and to give you a quick update or refresh on what happened when we were last here, we did 4 power runs with the Fox, with our biggest horsepower figure being 285 horsepower with power run number 4, because we were slowly incrementing and increasing the boost. Now, on power run number 5, something went wrong, if you'll remember. We had this code come up, basically meaning we were having a diverter valve leak. We were losing boost pressure through our diverter valve, meaning that after power run number 4, which was 285 horsepower, we were not making more horsepower. We were making like 250 on all of the subsequent power runs because of that problem. Now, we are not going to do any mapping. We are just going to find out what the current map actually produces in terms of a horsepower figure, because for power run number 5, when we were last here, we already put a revised map on the car so that it will be even faster than 285 horsepower. We now just want to find out what that revised map has done to the horsepower of the Fox. So let's do it. Let's see what the Fox GTI can make. I am very excited. Mate, I'd never get sold. That massive flame that comes out of the exhaust. It's so good. Mate, this thing, it is so cool. It just flames like crazy. 290. So we are now sitting at 290 horsepower. I'll put the graph on the screen now so you can all see it. I thought we may be around 295, but 290 is still a big improvement from the last time. And we are running the engine with a standard engine with this much horsepower. So I don't want to try and push my luck and go for 300. I think this car is happy at this current power figure, and 290 rounds up to 300 anyway, so we're going to call it 300, but it is 290. So yeah, that is pretty mental. Right, here we go. First drive in the Fox. I am very excited to see what this thing's like. Now, obviously, I have driven it around the business park, so the feeling isn't completely new to me, but I haven't yet completely put the foot down to see what it's like on full throttle. So I am very excited to see what it's like. But immediately you could just tell the car is so much more together. Everything feels tight. The suspension feels firm, the brakes feel good. Let's just give it a little. Oh my god. That, even just a little lost traction completely there. This thing is quick. This thing is so quick. It is absolutely night and day from what it used to, what it used to feel like. The speed is, and the turbo noise as well. You can hear. This thing is rapid. I just keep telling myself this is a Volkswagen Fox. This thing should not be this fast. Oh my gosh. Okay, so the turbo comes in so much stronger now because we've obviously got that K300 turbo, which is obviously that hybrid turbo, a lot bigger. So it the feeling of the torque wave that comes in when you feel the boost kick in is so much more than it used to be, and it keeps going. It feels linear. It doesn't feel like a massive whoosh of turbo and then it sort of flattens out at the end. It just it keeps going. Oh my god! And the brakes feel great as well. We're going on a dual carriageway now, so we'll be able to see what it's like accelerating up to 70 miles an hour. But wow, I am seriously impressed with this car, and the fact that it's got I know I've said this before, and it might seem like a bit of a joke, but I love the fact this car has 6 cup holders. It just, like, it's so usable. And we've got our upgraded sound system in here as well, like our like Audison sound system with our new Bluetooth stereo, so we can play all of our tunes. The interior is like really nice. We'll go from second gear. Oh, the pop! This thing gets up seriously quickly. Like the speeds that we can, this is really fast. This puts the Jazz to shame. Like, this car is so much faster than the Jazz. I suppose it's just turbo power at the end of the day. Like, that is what turbos do. They make cars a lot faster. And everything works. It just feels, this thing is rapid. This thing is actually rapid. We have built a really good car here. It like fully works. Like, the car's comfortable, it handles well, and it is rapid. And it's a Volkswagen Fox. Like, I genuinely think we have succeeded with our mission to make a Fox GTI. I am so pleased with this car. So here's the end product.
Let me tell him one time, I've been on the grind, this is my prime. Huh. Let me tell him one time, I've been on the grind, and this is my prime. Yeah, sorry for the wait, didn't think I'd come up, y'all just need a little faith. I've been patient, just waiting on the river with an ace. Gotta move real careful, we coming surveying the place. I've been on the grind, feeling real good, yeah, all in my prime. It's about that time, say your goodbyes, cause ain't no match for the way that I grind, yeah, I'm all in my prime.
So later that week, we took the car to LLF Games to raffle it. As much as I would love to keep all of the projects, it's just not financially feasible. So I thought I'd give one of my subscribers a chance to win it, and after the raffle winner was picked out, we could give him a phone call with the good news. We're gonna wake him up.
Hello?
Hello, Jordan, yes! Yes.
I just see you, leave voicemail.
Yeah, I left you a voicemail. Is this Jordan speaking?
Yeah, speaking, Jack.
Legend, mate, you've just won the Fox.
Oh, brilliant.
Mate, how do you feel? You have just won a 290 horsepower Fox that's bright purple.
To be fair, mate, I watched all your builds, like the builds on it.
Oh.
So I was thinking, I might as well enter it, because I've entered a few before.
Yeah.
I didn't think I'd win it.
Mate, that's so sick to hear. I'm so glad that you've watched all the videos. Well, mate, yeah, thanks for picking up, and yeah, I'm looking forward to meet you.
No, you too, mate, appreciate it. Thank
all
you.
right, man, legend. I'll speak to you in a bit. Cheers. Bye. So there we are, we have our first ever winner for a raffle on the channel. There will be lots more to come, but let's skip to a couple of days' time where we meet Jordan. So here we are, it is the final day with the Fox GTI. It is going to be going to a new home today, and that is because Jordan has just arrived. Well, Jordan, we've already said hello, but I'll say hello again.
Okay.
Mate, so we have been discussing this off camera. You only bought 100 tickets, which is the equivalent of about £15 worth.
Yeah.
So I think that's pretty cool for the Fox GTI.
Oh, definitely, mate, yeah.
But no, so I think people would be interested to know, like, sort of what your plans are for the Fox.
Well, enjoy it. Use it a weekend car. Hopefully do a few track days in it.
A few track days.
Yeah, enjoy it. And
got the AR1s on there.
Yeah.
You got the downturn exhaust tip.
Yeah.
What do you reckon you'll do any modifications to the interior, like maybe a roll cage?
I thought about bucket seats.
Yeah.
But then obviously you've just redone it, so I don't really want to ruin it just yet.
Well, it's me. As I said, it's your car now. You can do what you want with it. But
in the future, maybe.
And before saying goodbye to the Fox, Jordan and I went out in the car for one final rip down the road before the Fox went off to its new home. Right, Jordan, whenever you're ready, mate, give it some beans. Yeah, no cut. It just puts a smile on your face, doesn't it?
It's unique, isn't it? It's like, no one's ever done
it. There it goes. I'm going to shed a tear, but it is going to a good home, so see you later, mate. So if you did go on to enjoy this video and the whole series, then make sure to smash that like button and click that subscribe button if you haven't already, and I'll catch you in the next one.